Two, hello. Check two. Two, hello.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Bro 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 bro.
That sounded like bro. Thank you, Metal Dipshit. Thank you, Metal Dipshit, for the 21 months resub at tier 3. Thank you, Metal Dipshit. I appreciate that. I'll even forgive you for the what should be an uncontroversial, a completely, uncontroversial banning, and what was an unforgivable sin of the Rickrolling, which we don't need to speak of. We don't need to bring this up ever again. I'll even forgive you that for that, though, Metal Dipshit. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Metal Dipshit. You're back. You're back in that elite tier for now. Tentatively. You better watch out. Better watch out, Metal Dipshit. How's it going, friends? What's up? I just had a nice wrestling talk with our friend Josh Custodio of Wrestling Brain, who appeared on this program the other day. I just appeared on Josh's pod, analyzing some Kevin Nash shoot interviews. It was very fun. Was just watching Monday's show, and now I know about Candida auris, and I couldn't be happier, for sure. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful news? Did you watch the one where he's eating spaghetti? We were only listening to audio clips. He was audibly eating in a number of those clips, though. So maybe that was the one. Chin chin, everyone. Hello, Husker. What's up? Is it Langston Hughes B-Day today? I did not know that. Lenin walks around the world. Frontiers cannot bar him. Neither barracks nor barricades impede, nor does barbed wire scar him. Lenin walks around the world. Black, brown, and white receive him. Language is no barrier. The strangest tongues believe him. Lenin walks around the world. The sun sets like a scar. Between the darkness and the dawn, there rises a red star. Still hits hard. And it's interesting, between the darkness and the dawn, I think that's where we're at right now. Isn't that where we're at currently? Right? That's the exact moment we're at now, talking about Monday's show, and we're all panicking over the next pandemic. I think that's where we're at right now. So words to inspire us all. We talk often about having revolutionary optimism. Now, it's not always easy. Well, how about that? How's that for revolutionary optimism? Between the darkness and the dawn, there rises a red star. We love it. We fucking love it. Just so everyone is aware, tonight, this evening, at 9 p.m. Eastern, in the TRRS Discord server, we will be screening James Cameron's 1986 masterpiece sequel, Aliens, starring Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, Paul Reiser, and a number of others. We did Alien last week. We're doing Aliens this week. We're not going to be doing weekly movie nights. Okay, I'm not going to commit to doing weekly movie nights, but I have been wanting to watch these films with all of you for a long time now. So I will be able to do them more often. So at bare minimum, we can have at bare minimum, we can have an officially sanctioned TRRS movie night monthly, which I think is not that bad. Maybe we could push it up to bi-monthly. Or is bi-monthly twice a month, or is it every 2 months? I don't know. Maybe we can boost it up. RoboCop could be a good next option for the next one. Have you seen RRR? I actually watched I watched the first 45 minutes of it and haven't gotten around to finishing it. But I really enjoyed what I saw of it, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest. What if we did the first Wednesday of every month? That does make sense. Bi-monthly means every 2 months. Okay, that's not what I meant. Bi-weekly. Okay. Bi-weekly. For now, let's say monthly. Okay? Let's say that. Starting now, the first Wednesday of every month, TRRS movie night. Thinking about when to launch the Discord OC rewatch. Yeah, we're gonna have to find a different schedule for that. I can't guarantee that I will be there for all of those. I would like to catch some of those first season episodes, though, because those are just tremendous. Those are absolutely tremendous. That first season. And speaking of The Simpsons, it's like the bi-month sci-fi con from The Simpsons. Speaking of The Simpsons, I rewatched an episode last night, Itchy and Scratchy Land, with my son, and fuck, there was a joke in there that I had totally forgotten about that it took me off guard. You may know what I'm talking about. I couldn't believe that it was actually on Disney Plus, because it's a direct reference to Walt Disney. Let me see if I can find it on YouTube. Is it this? Let me see. This joke really took me off guard. I could not believe it. That this survived in the Disney Plus. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Quaker Oats guy knows what I'm talking about.
Roger Myers Sr., the gentle genius behind Itchy and Scratchy, loved and cared about almost all the peoples of the world. And he, in return, was beloved by the world, except in 1938, when he was criticized for his controversial cartoon, Nazi Supermen Are Our Superiors. Among his...
Oh my God. I had totally forgotten about that and watched that. It absolutely blew my mind last night. That made it onto Disney Plus. Like you can log into Disney Plus and watch that episode. Oh my God. That's so good. That is so good.
Roger Myers Sr., the gentle genius behind Itchy and Scratchy, loved and cared about almost all the peoples of the world. And he, in return, was beloved by the world, except in 1938, when he was criticized for his controversial cartoon, Nazi Supermen Are Our Superiors.
Fuck. I mean, that's just the kind of shit, like, that's why, yeah, almost all the people in the world is snuck in there as well. You know, you don't see anything like that, I don't think, in the fact that this show is still on, you know? You don't see that kind of that level of subversive humor in there. I was watching it with my kid, and he was like, wanted to know why I was laughing so much. And I was like, I don't know if I can explain it to you. I can't explain it to you right now. The first 600 episodes are on the Internet Archive, and I don't have Disney edits. Saves me from a Disney Plus sub. I mean, I have a 7-year-old kid, so it's basically mandatory to have Disney Plus. But it's been really cool for me to be able to enjoy those old episodes with him. He really likes it. He really likes it a lot. So I've been showing him all the old classics. We watched Last Exit to Springfield the other day. You're saying this is better than the Elon Musk is a genius episode? Did they have an episode of that? That's just horrible. That's horrible to hear about. We watched the Flaming Moe's episode. Like, it's truly incredible. Like, it's genuinely like a historic run where you can just like throw a dart at a dartboard with any of the first basically 8 seasons or so, and just any episode you land on is just an absolute fucking classic. It's true. It's just amazing. Even like early, like, I don't know, season 1, maybe there's some good stuff. Maybe it's a little shaky, but season 2, I think the second episode is the one where Homer gets hair. When he takes that special medication to grow hair and becomes successful and popular at work, and it's a fucking banger. It's like episode 2 of season 2. Nobody else has ever achieved that density of jokes. That's a big part of it, right? It's literally just every line, or like every third line basically is a joke, and it's so packed with visual gags, and just it's truly unbelievable the level of talent they had creating those. Last Exit to Springfield too. It's a really good example of labor power and what it is. It's a good way to explain that. You know, my kid was like, in the song, you know, Lisa sings the song, "March day and night by the big cooling tower. They had the plant, but we have the power." And he was just like, but Mr. Burns is in the plant. And I was like, that's right. It's the people that work at the plant are the ones that do all the work. They're the ones that make the plant happen. Mr. Burns is just sitting around all day. He's not doing anything. It's the people that are running in the workstations, and the people that are doing all the work, you know? They're the ones that make the plant work. It's a funny way to explain that. The monorail episode. I never played the hit and run game, no. It's just unbelievable how good it is. Wondering if that's the byproduct of that is now the Joss Whedon style of punchline, every other line of dialogue. I don't think so, because like what we're describing is basically like all sitcom writing, right? I think Joss Whedon brings that like snappy dialogue though to these action and sci-fi properties, you know? And just, it's not even like jokes, but it's these sarcastic quips. And like that, the thing that we've now really cliched so much. Oh, that just happened. Like that's not really that's not really a punchline, right? That's just like this certain kind of like sarcastic humor in which all these Whedon-esque heroes all employ the exact same style of these kind of quips. You know, which is not sitcom. That's what sitcom writing is. It's just like set up, punchline, set up, punchline. And just, you know, that's what every half-hour sitcom is. But it's like in these early Simpsons episodes, it's just some of the all-time best and funniest people writing the jokes and just slamming homers to turn a phrase. You know, just stepping up to the plate and hitting a grand slam every single time. Every single episode. You know, it will never be rivaled again. So funny how they did the monorail episode just to later dedicate an entire episode to the real life monorail guy. That's just sad. That's just absolutely sad. I don't think that would be a phrase, John. And John, we saw what happened yesterday. You saw that I can become mad with power when mods start going against me, so I would just watch out. Watch out, sir. My kid is really funny because he loves the figures that he gravitates to are really funny. He loves Mr. Burns. I think that's Mr. Burns is probably his favorite character. And he's always making excuses. He's always making excuses for Mr. Burns or a lot of like villainous characters. He's like, well, they're not that, they're nice. And I'm like, no. I mean, he's a mean old man. He's not nice. Do you know who else? It's not just Mr. Burns. Do you know who my kid's favorite character is right now? If I let you people guess, you would not be able to guess. You could spend this entire episode guessing at who his favorite character is, and you would never guess that it's Scrooge. It's literally Scrooge from A Christmas Carol. He loves Scrooge. Like, Netflix put out this, like, I don't know if you saw, if you have kids, you might have known that Netflix put out this like Christmas Carol, like musical, like animated musical this holiday, and it's like his favorite. He loves this movie. He's still totally talking about Christmas Carol and Scrooge all the time because as you know, he loves Charles Dickens. And I'm kind of saying like, okay, well, it's not. I mean, I want to encourage him and everything, but it's like, okay, it's not Christmas anymore. Like we can't talk about. I can't spend the whole next year talking about Scrooge and the Christmas Carol, A Christmas Carol. Fuck. Yeah, just get it out of your system, whatever. Yeah, just write it in the chat. Hi, I want to offer promotion of your channel. Oh, I lost him. I was trying to get involved in a hot opportunity. I guess my mods don't want me to promote the channel. Whatever. Scrooge does find redemption. That's right. And I'm trying to emphasize that as well. I'm trying to emphasize that. You know, he wasn't happy when he just had money. All he's doing is counting his money. That's not what makes you happy in life. You know, it makes him happy when he starts being generous and not being a mean guy. He loves Scrooge. And yeah, like he literally wants to get a nightcap. We ordered him a nightcap from Amazon because he wants to have a nightcap now, like Scrooge. This guy loves Scrooge. It's so funny. As someone that always liked villains in stories, I can say I turned out okay, I think. Yeah, I hope so. And villains are often the most compelling characters. It's true in wrestling as well. It's just really funny the people that my son gravitates to. You know, it's kind of strange to me. My 4-year-old's favorite band is Sparks. Kids are weird. They are weird. They're funny little characters. I saw this tweet earlier from Gwynny as well, right before we were starting. This Gwynny here, I've been lurking with my son's account for quite a while. TRRS, yes, the best. I love the idea that we're radicalizing, you know, moms and dads out there on their kids' Twitch accounts. I love that idea. Yeah, Venom, Mr.
You can
Hyde,
count
and
on
Scrooge.
me. You're gonna
That's
have
right.
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Part Ian. Thanks for the 17 months of Tier 1. Um, yeah, Venom, Mr. Hyde, and Scrooge, and he loves all the in Oliver Twist too. Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about his love of Oliver Twist. He loves Charles Dickens. I don't know what. I think it was my mom that put him on this. He's the only 7-year-old that's obsessed with Charles Dickens. So he likes Bill Sikes and Fagin from Oliver Twist as well. Very funny guy. But he loves Scrooge, and in The Simpsons he loves Mr. Burns. Somehow I found Jack AM. Jack AM, a number of community members came to us from Jack AM. I'm actually going to take this off. I'm a little warm. Wore my Young Bucks shirt today. Was doing a wrestling interview, so I wore my wrestling shirt. What's up with the DPRK meetup shirts? Well, we're just waiting on Old Dutch. Whenever Old Dutch has a moment, yeah, he has actual like job and career and stuff to do besides designing merch for this program. But as soon as I can get the pics from him, I will upload it, and we will have the new merch. Looking forward to that. Kota Ibushi coming to Mania weekend. I did see that he left NJPW. Pretty interesting. I'm wondering if Jay White's going to show up in WWE. I was the same. I was way too obsessed with Dickens at 6, especially David Copperfield. That's so funny. That's so funny. My kid loves Charles Dickens. That's right. He really wants to wear like top hats and stuff. Like he wants to wear top hats and like nightcaps. He wants to bring that back. You know? He has a really funny obsession with haircuts, and which Scrooges. Some Scrooges are bald, and I've explained to him about male pattern baldness. Some Scrooges are bald, and some have hair. He has this game on our iPad that you can cut hair, and he's always making Scrooge in the game. He takes this guy and like dyes his hair gray and gives him baldness and puts a top hat on him, and he's like, it's Scrooge. He's a really funny guy. He spends a lot of time thinking about people's various different haircuts and hair lengths and stuff like that. And who has long hair and who has short hair and who's bald and who's not. This just fascinates him for some reason. And he's saying that he wants to have a mullet. That's his thing. I don't know if he's going to stick with that the next time he goes to get his haircut, but that's what he's saying now. He spends a lot of time thinking about this. People's different haircuts. A really funny dude. Yeah. It really makes me laugh. I had a mullet all through school. I turned out fine. I never had one. It was like the mid-90s for me. Mullets were already kind of out, I think. I did have the middle part. I had the middle part and longer hair for a while. The mid-90s teen idol look. The JTT, that's right. That's correct. The mid-90s super long undercut. Skate rat cut. Yeah. Hey, Netlocked, how's it going? What are we doing today? I don't know. I didn't have a lot of chance to prepare. I know there's other stuff we can take a look at. I was busy doing Josh's podcast in the leading up to this. I was always also working on some music. Got some new music coming. I've been a little bit lazy about that the last month or two. But got a new track on the way. That's been kind of fun. Gotta do 2 more songs. 2 more songs, and then I have a full-length album worth of new songs. Which is kind of hard for me to believe. Is not male pattern baldness a result of syphilis, which in turn led to the creation of wigs? Is that true? I did not realize that. Surely there was baldness before. Aren't some like apes bald? Should show your son the old Rob image. Oh boy, the old Rob image. I don't know if he's ready for that. I think he's already seen old Rob on a couple of other apps. I think on we've looked at Snapchat and seen old Rob on that. I actually just got an email talking about my son that he's doing like a lockdown drill at school, which I don't know that he's done before. I don't think so. It's kind of scary. I kind of wish that he did not have to do that. I would like to know more info about like how they handle that and what they explain what this drill is about. You know, Canada's not like America. I think if I was a parent in America, I would be a lot more concerned about gun violence and that kind of stuff, considering how like it seems like it's been escalating so much over the last couple of decades, especially over the last few years. It's not very common in Canada. There was a school shooting in Montreal, though. I mean, it was a couple years ago at Dawson College. I'm not I hope it doesn't become more of a common element in our culture. Guns are obviously a lot more difficult to get a hold of. You can't just turn 18 and purchase an assault weapon, as far as I know. So I think it makes these things like more difficult to do. But there was a shooting in Montreal a couple years ago. There was the RCMP officer that went on a rampage. Of course there was that, yeah. Which is weirdly that we didn't hear much about that after the investigation. That the RCMP was like deeply implicated in the largest mass shooting in the history of this country. Don't really hear. I believe there was an inquiry about that, but didn't really go anywhere. Kind of interesting. Yeah, and École Polytechnique back in the day. That's right. Ian is one of the prototypes for these exact kind of situations. Based in it was like one of these like incels, like where it's such a common thing that we're aware of now, but École Polytechnique was like one of the first such incidents anywhere. Directly targeting women, in that way. So I guess I understand why they got to do these drills, but it's like, it's a little scary to think about them having to do that. And I'm not sure what they say to the kids. No, I know. Like, he had access to police-only banking withdrawals and a carbon copy, a 100% copy of an RCMP vehicle. Like, clearly, he was one of their guys. Which is funny because it just has not been really discussed or investigated whatsoever. Oh, you know what I kind of wanted to do today? I saw that Canada Land has put out a podcast episode about the Chinese infiltration of our government. Did we see this? I kind of thought maybe we should listen to it. My child's school is surrounded by fence and has a keypad entry to open the gate, but I don't feel great about that either. Fuck, it's disturbing, isn't it? It's so disturbing. Sounds based, go China. Well, that's when I heard that news, it's just like, that sounds good to me. Everything's going according to plan. I hope it is true. Absolutely. Which I said as much. Because famously, this was what that scene with President Xi and Trudeau was about. Was about this story about China infiltrating the Canadian government, and then Xi admonished Trudeau publicly, as we talked about with VJ, for like leaking information about their talks about it. And then Trudeau immediately denied it afterwards, that it had been going on, which just adds to the fuel. It's amazing that, it adds to the fuel of these conspiracy theories about Chinese infiltration of the government. And it's totally amazing, like we were talking about yesterday, as much as folks like Jesse Brown or Canada Land kind of tried to position themselves in opposition to these like trucker protests. Like you're seeing with this story that Canada Land's doing on this, that they basically agree, right? They're in basic agreement that, yeah, Trudeau and the Canadian government is under the control of the evil CCP, and liberals like Jesse Brown and Canada Land kind of talk about how they're these kind of enlightened folks that are so far above and beyond these deranged conspiracy theorists on the right. But you're seeing when it comes to the anti-China stuff that they're in complete agreement that there is this government infiltration that's been going on. Canada pretending China cares enough to infiltrate is so embarrassing. I know it's like it's probably not true, but that's the kind of thing that if it is true, I support it. And it's the kind of thing as well where I don't want to speak for Jesse or anyone else, but it's like, we don't talk about, who has a lot of influence over our government? The United States of America. Maybe we should discuss that a little bit, Maybe we should discuss that we basically don't have a foreign policy and we take cues from the United States State Department. Or the infiltration of our media with these kind of American perspectives. Like maybe we should talk about Israel's influence on the Canadian government. Should we talk about that? Israel now has elected this completely openly fascist government. They're stepping up their pogroms against Palestinian people while we're giving them endless diplomatic cover, talking about our beautiful, wonderful international friendship, unshakable friendship with Israel, while they're murdering kids at a record clip, while we're simultaneously lecturing other countries around the world, including China, about our precious values of human rights. Right? Maybe we should talk about the infiltration that Israel has over the Canadian government. The Chinese state has infiltrated Canadian democracy at all levels. Maybe we can talk about that. Maybe we can talk about the Saudis and their infiltration. They threatened to do 9/11 to us, and we basically apologized to them. Maybe we should talk about Saudi infiltration of our government. We don't want to hear about that, though, I guess. But we do want to know about the devious the devious CPC infiltrating our government. Which, again, if you're a liberal, at a time of like rising xenophobic rhetoric, hate crimes against Asian people, it's probably even better time to be doubling down on these kinds of theories and this kind of fear-mongering about China's infiltration of our government. Just because it's the U.S. playbook doesn't mean it's how the enemies of the U.S. play the game. Yeah, I mean, that's right. We don't need to, just because that's exactly how America treats other countries around the world, we often project our own values and our own views onto these other countries and suggest that they have the same goals or they're engaging in the same kind of behavior that we do. Or we can talk about Canada. We're talking about, the Chinese state infiltrating Canadian democracy. What about all the democracies that the Canadian government has infiltrated in Africa and Latin America? Canada was a key member of the Lima Group, where we decided that democratic elections in Venezuela just didn't count. And we were part of a global effort to just pronounce some fucking guy, Juan Guaido, as president of Venezuela, who has no backing and no legitimacy. Do we want to talk about that? Do we want to talk about Canadian mining interests in Latin America or in Africa? Or our work to destroy Haiti? Maybe we should talk about that as well. No, let's focus on this. Let's focus on this devious Chinese threat. We get together with our friends and decide who wins in Haiti like every election. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I think we should give a listen to this. I think we should listen to this. Can I get your francophone thoughts on what's going on in Haiti? Have you seen the Al Jazeera and Sky News interviews with the gang leader known as Barbecue? No, I haven't. I'm not really francophone, Matron's malicious, so I don't know if I have that much more input than anyone else is going to have. But I mean, Haiti has been a imperialist playground now for generations, ever since the Haitian Revolution. And it's just this nonstop process of the Canadian government, along with its imperialist allies, meddling in the affairs of Haiti. We saw during Hillary Clinton's time in the State Department, when they wanted to raise their extremely low minimum wage by a few fucking cents an hour, how he helped overthrow the government then. And the more information in the media and the more news stories we're seeing about these Haitian gangs and the dangerous levels of violence with these Haitian gangs is just an indication that we're planning on continuing that infiltration. We're continuing that imperialist process, and we don't have any intention of stopping our meddling in this country. And all the stuff talking about the gang activity is and ignoring all the legitimate protest, anti-Western protests that's been going on there for many years as well, is just an indication that they're ramping up the exact same behavior. Is Canada not involved in the Xinjiang East Turkestan shit? Well, I mean, our government, not even the Liberal government, but the NDP and the Conservatives teamed up in our parliament to formally accuse China of committing genocide. So yeah, we're implicated in that. At the very bare minimum, we're implicated in propagating that theory that there's this genocide going on. And again, not even our liberal ruling class, but our Social Democratic Party and our Reactionary Party came together on this. Hey, Robin Roblings. Happy Wednesday. How's the overthrowing Western governments for President Xi going? Or we're going to find out, Doc. We're going to find out. We are going to find out. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to get to the bottom of this story, this explosive story. folks. President Xi, if you're reading this, do it. Please. Someone's going to, like, obviously we're not going to build a high-speed rail system on our own. That's clear enough. As I've been advocating for repeatedly on this program, not only do I hope that they do infiltrate the government using these covert methods, but I hope that we just straight up join the Belt and Road Initiative eventually, so maybe they can actually help us build some infrastructure. Clearly, we're incapable of doing this. Clearly, we're incapable of building these big infrastructure projects, so maybe we should start working with someone who can do this, right? We can't do it. We're not going to fucking build the rails, so maybe someone can. Country has a problem with poverty, just say it has a gang problem and you don't have to help them. Yeah, and in fact, you can like overthrow the government and institute a military dictatorship. Canada doesn't have high-speed rail either. I mean, no, we don't. We have a rickety old system that's falling apart and is prohibitively expensive to use, despite the fact, as I've mentioned a number of times, of course it would be easier than the US. As I keep mentioning, like 45% of the population of this country lives in a straight line, essentially, between Quebec City and Windsor, Ontario. Like, that's all. That would be a rail project between these two places, a subsidized, affordable, high-speed rail project between these two locations would serve 45% of this country. Would make a huge difference in getting cars off the road, lowering emissions, which we claim to care about. We claim to have to prioritize this. The Liberals are saying by 2035 there are going to be no more new gas-powered cars sold. It's going to be all EVs and zero-emissions vehicles. They claim to care about that as an actual result, lowering emissions. Well, that's one thing that would do it. Creating this high-speed rail line that services 45% of our population. Here's the amazing thing as well. This is something that I found out just the other day while we're on this subject. Let me see here. It's in my bookmarks. I bookmarked this a couple weeks ago and intended to talk about it, never got around to it. It's a good example that we can do it. Just one sec. Scrolling away here. I'm sure I still have this, and you're going to be so thankful. You're going to be so thankful that I found this. Yes. Check this out. Here's a little bit of hidden history for you from this country. I never realized this. We talk all the time about high-speed rail and whether we could have it or not have it. Well, did you know? I didn't know this. Remember that in 1970, while CN Rail was still a public crown corporation, it developed a high-speed turbo train capable of 274 kilometers per hour. In 1970, we had a turbo train being developed in 1970. We could have this. We could have this system by now. Why is this frozen? Jesus Christ. We had a turbo train, folks. The Avro Sparrow. You know, that's the stuff so frustrating about this, right? We have the technology, we have the means to do all this, and we've just decided not to. And we've seen in China since like 2009 or whatever year, I believe is the year they started really working on this, expanding this project. We could have actually had this by now, you know? And it would make such a huge impact on people's lives, on the climate, our emissions, all these things we're supposed to claim to hold valuable. Turbo Train was in operation for 14 years. Even though it didn't have enough rail to reach top speed, it was still way faster than any of your rail train today. Yeah, I think that's the frustrating thing, is that we just, even if it wasn't perfect in when it was being invented, when it came out, you know, we do have the means to have this technology. If we had just taken the time and effort and put the energy and resources into building this infrastructure, you know, we would live in a completely different country right now. And now it's 2023, and we're not even anywhere near even beginning to have we're not even having a conversation about it. Let alone we're not even beginning the project. We're not even talking about doing it. You know, we've gone backwards in so many ways. Anyway. I think we better dive into this explosive story, friends. Auto and gas give big donations to candidates that would destroy mass transit. How is this not fucking corruption? You know? It would be nice if we lived in a country where corruption was actually like taken seriously and, you know, even punished, maybe if there's some consequences for this kind of stuff. Yeah, there's going to be hyperloops though any minute now, any moment. They're going to figure out how that shit works. What's the deal with Canada Land? Is it supposed to be leftist? I don't know. It's like, I know they're big critics of like the establishment media in this country, and maybe tell some stories that the established media is not telling. I don't want to say everything they do is like worthless. Like, I don't really believe that. I know they tried to do that show Oppo, which they pitched as being like a Chapo Trap House thing, but it's like, it was with like Justin Ling. Like that was, which just speaks to how completely like, you know, the complete lack of anything resembling a left, such as it is, exists whatsoever in this country. Yeah, Jen Gerson and Justin Ling. Unbelievable, yeah. Anyway, we're going to check out this explosive story, folks. Very scary, very dangerous stuff happening with this infiltration of the Canadian government by agents of the CPC, not the Conservative Party. They got a lot of flack for covering the Wii scandal. Yeah, they've definitely done some decent journalism. I don't think I wouldn't deny that. But I also wouldn't call them like leftist. Or if they want to call them leftist, then like it's really revealing that how meaningless that term really is. Jen Gerson, the pundit that advocated for troops on the ground in Venezuela, is part of the Canadian Chapo. Yeah, that's right. That's correct. This sounds like something honking truckers would say. What is this about? Well, that's what I mean. It's like people like Jesse Brown and folks that listen to Canada Land would say, no, of course I don't support these trucking convoy right-wing protests. Of course not. But as we see with this piece, ultimately they believe the same thing. They believe different variations of the same thing, which is that there's been some infiltration of the Canadian government by the Chinese Communist Party. And to what end? I don't know. We're going to see. We're going to see as we listen to this story. As the Chinese state has infiltrated Canadian democracy at all levels, according to a bombshell report from investigative reporter Sam Cooper of Global News. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has issued a stern denial, throwing cold water on the story, who's telling the truth, and exactly what is Beijing up to in Canada. Sam Cooper explains his work. Yeah, this was, of course, Trudeau after she called him out and admonished him. It made him look like a dumb child. Leftist is just a nice way of saying trot. Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't even call like Jesse Brown and Canada Land Trotskyists, though. It's like they're like progressive liberals, I guess, is what I would say. Like, I don't even think they get to the level of being trots. What is Beijing up to? We're going to see. So this is after President Xi admonished Trudeau in that hilarious clip when Trudeau like slunk away like a wounded puppy. They'd clutch their pearls at Stalin, Grandpa. Yes, they would. Yes, they would. I identify as a leftist because I can't make my mind up about theory. I think you got to join us, Lexi. You got to join us. You don't have to be a Marxist-Leninist, but I think, like me, you should at least be a Marxist-Leninist sympathizer, a fellow traveler. The Trudeau clip with President Xi? Yeah, it must be. Wait, just hold on just one sec. Okay.
Everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate.
而且我们也不是那样进行的。
And that's not how the way the conversation was
如
conducted.
果有诚心，咱们就用一个互相尊重的态度来进行很好的沟通。
If there is
否则这个结果就不好说了。
You know this guy speaks English too.
on your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have
有
to
些可以建设性，但是
创造条件，创造条件。
Let's create the conditions first.
好，好。
We saw a
Here's
video
his
today
follow-up.
of you having an exchange with Xi Jinping, and President Xi seemed to be very upset. He accused you of leaking the contents of a conversation that you two had on the sidelines of the G20. I'm just wondering, Why was President Xi so upset? Was this a misunderstanding? Did you offer him some kind of assurances that you wouldn't talk about this?
It's just, you do really do. Like, I talked about this with BJ the other day, though, but it really is the height of like that colonial mentality, right? VJ talks about that a lot. And you have Justin Trudeau saying like, well, we always believe in having firm, respectful disagreements and dialogue, or whatever. And just like, are these two on the same kind of level in any way? Like I was pointing out, there's more people in the Chinese Communist Party by many times more people than live in this actual country. And Justin Trudeau is still thinking he can kind of like, he's on the same level as a world leader like President Xi, or acting like he can kind of like engage in this kind of petty bullshit, leaking these stories to the press and stuff. You know, it's just arrogance. And you can see when Justin Trudeau is talking, she's like, let's hear what Trudeau responded with.
First of all, not every conversation is always going to be easy, but it's extremely important that we continue to stand up for the things that are important for Canadians. This is something we always do, and we will continue to. I highlighted areas in which we can and should be working together. A good example is the Nature COP15, being held in Montreal over the coming weeks. At the same time, as I highlighted, areas of mutual concern.
Seriously, Graham.
Geopolitical challenges, from the war in Ukraine to the situation in North Korea. I also highlighted things of preoccupations to Canadians.
We caused the situation
like,
in North Korea.
The question of interference with our citizens, and highlighted that it's important that we be able to have dialogue about this. But part of our values as Canadians is being open and frank about the conversations we have, keeping Canadians involved and apprised of what it is that we're doing and the conversations we're having here, and that's exactly what I did.
Why do you think, though, why do you think he was so upset? What was the message that he was trying to get across to you? Do you think this was a power play of some kind?
We know that China is an important global player in the economy and has a very big impact on events around the world. Canada needs to be able to engage constructively and directly on areas we can work together, while at the same time we continue to be there to challenge on human rights, on values and principles that matter to Canadians, and look to advance the interests of Canadians. And this is something that we're going to consistently do in a clear and hopefully a constructive way.
I'm trying to look for the moment. This where he denied when he said this in Tunisia. The government hasn't identified the candidates publicly because they don't know who they are. He only learned of the specific allegation from the media. I said, let me be clear. I do not have any information, nor have I been briefed on any federal candidates receiving any money from China. That's what he said. So now maybe we should take a look at this. Now, just 1 second. I'm just going to take a screenshot so I can tweet that I'm live covering this explosive story. No, that's not good. Take my screenshot here. So what the fuck happened here? This is what we're going to get to the bottom of. We got these press reports about interference in elections. Then Trudeau echoed the point and then denied the point. That's right. He echoed the point and then denied the point once this moment happened. You know she speaks English too. You just know he does. I think this is actually a better thing to have on the screen. Okay. That's face is gonna have to do. It's not a total pog face, but it'll have to do. Okay, done. Okay, that's done. I tweeted. Let's now dig into this story. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Okay? We're going to get to the bottom of this. Here's the Canadaland episode featuring Sam Cooper of Global News. Let's find out what's going on here.
The news broke last November, and you'd kind of think that it would have been a bigger deal.
Foreign entities acting covertly to influence and subvert Canadian democracy. Global News has learned that those very things have already been happening here.
Oh my
with sources
God.
telling us that Beijing is pulling the strings.
Can you
sources
again, folks, it is explosive, isn't it? It's explosive. Can you imagine a foreign government interfering in Canadian democracy? It's just unthinkable. Subverting Canadian democracy, a foreign government, unbelievable. Really scary stuff. I'm glad that we're focusing on this.
Global News that in January of 2022, Canadian intelligence delivered a series of sensitive briefings to warn the Prime Minister and select members of his cabinet that the agency had evidence China was running sophisticated operations, including allegations of placing Chinese agents into the offices of sitting members of parliament and funding a secret network of candidates who ran in the 2019 general election.
Who are these? Who seriously? Like, I know they're not going to name anybody, but who are all these fucking Chinese financed candidates running in Canadian elections? I've literally not heard one. Yeah, Canadian intelligence said this. As we looked in when we covered this story at the time, all of this story in Global News is just based on like intelligence sources said. Like, that's zero evidence was ever presented about it. It's literally just like, here's what CSIS is saying about this. Here's are my unnamed sources in the intelligence community have said it, and here's the official CSIS comment on it. That's literally the amount of journalism that's been done about this. But like, Who are like, I seriously, in our discourse, you're literally, there's not one person that's not advocating for more conflict with China. Like, who are these pro-China people in the Canadian government? I have not heard from one of them. Like I was saying, in the lead up to the election, you had the NDP and the Conservative Party coming together to officially accuse China of genocide. You have these constant lectures coming from the Liberal Party as well, even though they have to work with China as well. Who are all these like pro-China MPs? Yeah, I would actually vote for them. I would vote for a candidate that was actually advocating taking this terrifying radical stance that we should not be antagonizing this like emerging global superpower, and we should not be playing fucking chicken with them at the behest of the US State Department. I would love for more people in our government, in our political system, or our media to be making this argument. No one is doing that, though. There's no one that is doing that. So, like, what is the problem exactly? Is there a problem, literally, like when it comes to like the reporters on this or Jesse Brown or whoever, is there a problem that our government is not antagonistic enough towards China? Is that really the issue? Let's hear more of this explosive story.
At least 11 candidates in total. Global news sources said the network includes members of both the Liberal and Conservative parties, some with witting ties to the Chinese Communist Party.
11 candidates in our federal election secretly funded by the Chinese government? Politicians in both of our biggest parties?
Oh my God.
All right, well, who are they? Did any of them win? Did they know that they had been infiltrated? And what did the Prime Minister do when he was briefed about it? Yeah, you would think that this would have been a bit of a bigger deal. And you'd think that maybe this story would have legs, follow-up stories, demands for answers.
Why doesn't it have legs? Why are no follow-ups? Is the media, have they gotten to the media as well? Is that the problem? Why haven't there been any follow-ups on this? We're often saying how like soft on China our media establishment is. Maybe this is just another example of this. I fear this will be too cringe to listen to in its entirety, but we must do it. We must do it. They could have backed Rob to round it off to an even dozen. As I've been saying many times, I don't need to be a big shot. I don't need to have a 6-figure salary. It would cost nothing in the grand scheme of like the resources that China has. It would cost them basically nothing just to pay me like a living wage to do this program. You know, I'm still waiting. Maybe if someone tunes in and has that kind of ability to make a call to someone, you know, I would be more than happy. I wouldn't even do it secretly. I would just tell you. That's what was going on. You know, I would be fine with that. Yeah, a lot of that energy for sure. That's all right, Frank. We're just new. You might as well just call the country New China. I would defect for one high-speed rail line. Anyway, let's hear more of this. I'm already fucking losing it. It's 1:45. Into this podcast again, folks. We're talking about who's not talking. Why is no one talking about this? These 11 candidates, and we don't ever want to talk about the infiltration or the meddling that happens with the U.S. government, the Israeli government, the Saudi government. There's all kinds of governments that are meddling in our politics, and I'm sure there's many politicians that are taking money from these governments. Do we want to hear about that though, or what? I guess not. Does Canada engage in the exact same behavior in Latin America and Africa and all around and Haiti and all around the world? Don't want to hear about that either. I can't wait for the HUAC trials part 2. My promise to you, though, is that if I ever get hauled in front of a committee, if things start to get really bad and I get hauled in front of a committee, I'm not going to hedge, okay? It's not that I'm just not going to like give people up. I'm going to be like, yeah, I support these governments. Yes, I'll just tell them. Okay, this is my promise to you as in the community. I'm not going to be coy about this if they ever haul me in front of the Un-Canadian Activities Committee. Like one of those little A1 snack trucks. That would be nice as well. Just have that in your apartment or whatever. Mr. Russo, I'm Mr. Chen from the Chinese Propaganda Department. We appreciate your content and would like to have you on board. Please sign up here. Yeah, I know what the address is now, M. Leash. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me I can't get fooled again, as they say, as the saying goes. Let's hear more of this.
Answers to those questions. Well, it's been almost 3 months since that news broke. And
dropped.
The story has kind of died.
Oh my.
Because Justin Trudeau kind of killed it.
I have asked my officials to examine these media reports, but let me be clear. I do not have any information, nor have I been briefed, on any federal candidates receiving any money.
He's got the
from
red
China.
dot.
And that was that.
The red dot on him the whole time. While
Either
he's giving
Trudeau
that
was
statement.
lying, or the Global News reporter who broke that story, Sam Cooper, had it all wrong.
We looked at the Global News story. We can do it again. All this guy's sources are just people. It's just CSIS. That's his sources. His sources because as we've talked about many times, people that do this kind of foreign policy reporting in Canada, the way that they do carry out their journalism is that they go to these little security conferences and they write down what all the CSIS guys and the national security guys say, and they write it down, and then they go type up the things that they say and put it in their little newspapers. And that's their journalism. That's their reporting. By the way, thank you, GMO Radio, for the gifted sub 5 minutes ago. Thank you for that, GMO Radio. I appreciate it. He copy-pasted CSIS reports. How could he be wrong? We looked at this piece like when it came out. Anyway, let's hear more.
Sam Cooper joins me in a moment. Wait for it. This episode is brought to you by Denise Bouchard-Wood, Jeff Burling, Cohen Hammond, Greg Cooper, Ann Bryden, Alberto Palomino, Sahel Usin Rojas, and Joe.
I'm Joe, a video editor living in Toronto. I started supporting Canadaland to help get the Thunder Bay podcast series made. As someone who grew up in Northwestern Ontario, it was interesting and wild to hear what the crazy show that Thunder Bay can be. Shortcuts is my go-to look into Canadian media, but Wag the Dug and Commons Dynasties
Stepan Bandera's nephew's anonymous sources say Canada is now China.
Especially on New Brunswick.
That's right.
Sam, who were the 11 candidates in the 2019 federal election whose campaigns were allegedly secretly funded by the Chinese government?
My latest reporting is it's at least 11 candidates in the Greater Toronto area only that were allegedly funded by a network run out of the Toronto Chinese Consulate. This is a piece-by-piece investigation. It's based on years of my work and sourcing, reviews of documents that continue to come to light through leaks from people that are very concerned with Canada's national security and lack of protections against foreign interference.
We're very concerned about this.
From China, most specifically and threateningly, but also countries including Russia, Iran, North Korea, and some countries that people would consider allies. I'm not quite ready to name those other countries.
Jesus. All the official bad guys. This guy's really concerned about all the official baddies meddling in our democracy. And even you might even be surprised to know that there's some countries that we consider allies that are also engaging in this kind of practices. Oh my, I'm not ready to name. No, we could never do that. We must focus on China and Russia and North Korea's meddling efforts in our democracy. We can never name names though when it comes to our wonderful allies engaging in the exact same behavior, or actually successfully engaging in the behavior. Where where all these famously pro North Korean Canadian MPs. Now we know why they keep popping up.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Okay, this is getting absurd.
Now we know why all these pro North Korean MPs keep coming out of the woodwork, and now we know why. Lodane, thank you so much for the 27 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Lodane. Welcome. We love Lodane, folks. I've heard North Korea has 69 candidates running in Canada right now. I've actually heard that the Chinese and the Russians and the North Koreans are using this shadow group running out of the Chinese consulate known as Ligma. That's financing a lot of these candidates. Maybe we should look into that. Very, very dangerous stuff.
Countries. I hate to sound like the cops that I would question as a journalist, but this is an ongoing investigation where I'm not only getting information from people in very sensitive positions in government, but people in communities that are giving me information about what they confirm and corroborate are people in this Chinese threat network. Where
Chinese
I am at
Threat
Global
Network.
News, we are very currently working on putting forward names and specific details about candidates that my sources indicate were targeted by a network from China. And it's important to say this is a global network that's called the United Front Work Department. And my reporting is about how intelligence agencies in the West say that this global influence arm of the Chinese Communist Party is increasingly seeking to infiltrate democracies.
Our intelligence agencies are saying it, folks. He gives up the game right there, right? We looked into this actual piece when it came out. We know that's where it's coming from. This is what these intelligence guys are saying. Yeah, we know they're saying it. Do we know that sometimes these people are not honest, though? Are we aware of that? Do we know that sometimes these intelligence agency guys have like an ideological purpose in planting stories in the press? Remember when we look at those Jim Stockwell videos, he talks about this complicated process of like planting stories in the foreign press and like this kind of complicated process of laundering these stories until they get to mainstream media. Now you just have fucking saps like this just calling up CSIS, and they're like, yeah, here's what's going on. And they go and report it in the newspaper about the devious Chinese threat network infiltrating our government, influencing our politics. Oh, I would like to have Ian Goodrum on. That would be great. I don't know if you ever saw him. I think it was before your time in the community, Johnny, but I interviewed Carl Jha a couple months ago. That was fantastic as well. He should come back also. You fail to realize that they're the good guys and China are the bad guys, though. So, yeah, that's right. Yeah, true. These Chinese agents should start subverting Canadian democracy by smashing the SS monuments. Well, maybe they're the ones that behind that hate crime, the hate crime of spray painting Nazi monument on the monument to the Waffen SS division. The CCP has dispersed a cabal of mind goblins under the ideological umbrella known as Ligma. Very scary stuff, folks. Jesus Christ. We should just play the JFK music behind this.
This is not just Toronto. It's not just the federal government. It's all levels of government in Canada.
I need to bear down on this for a bit because it's an explosive report, okay? 11 people running to be members of parliament allegedly have their campaigns infiltrated by the Chinese consulate who want these candidates to win. We don't know who they are. We don't know which of these candidates won. Can I ask you that if you're not willing to or able to share the names? Did any of these candidates win? Are they currently members of parliament?
The information that I've reported so far is that the network includes liberals and conservatives. And you need to watch my wording very carefully. The network is not only people that have successfully or attempted to run in the 2019 election. My sourcing information, which ultimately stems from federal intelligence documents and then interviews with sources with awareness of the underlying CSIS investigations that inform these federal documents. The information is that members of the network include staff working for campaigns, staff working in the offices of elected officials.
Yeah, I'm playing the music.
Politicians at various levels
Are the
of
candidates
government.
in the room with you right now?
Community leaders who, on the surface, would look like leaders of grassroots community associations, but are in fact tasked by the consulate
I need to watch my wording
involved,
very
to be
carefully.
proxies.
Is what I say when I'm also cosplaying as an investigative reporter. Yeah. You never know who's listening. They could be listening to us right now. They don't want us talking about this. The devious Chinese threat network doesn't want us talking about this explosive story, Jesse.
In funding of campaigns and in offering, community support, offering endorsements, offering media. So I'm not ready to report on exactly who is allegedly involved in the network that was targeted, or if they were elected. But I can promise you and your listeners that I'm working very currently on reporting those facts.
So it's not just alleged that money made its way into the campaigns, but that actual staffers of the campaigns are working for Beijing.
The staffers?
Yes, the information is that federal candidates were targeted by Beijing to take the positions that the Chinese Communist Party would favor. So the logistical, the funding, the covert support through community groups and through, quote, co-opted staff is a means to infiltrate these campaigns and to influence Canada's parliamentarians. And so that's how it works.
Sam, I know that there are always very carefully considered reasons as to why reporters can share certain information and can't share other information. And I know that you'd probably like nothing better than to actually name names here and give us a complete picture. It's not simply that
I'm actually
these
scared
candidates
right now.
had their campaigns infiltrated with money from the Chinese consulate, but it sounded at one point like you were saying like politicians themselves are compromised, in that the politicians themselves are aware that they are in some way working for Beijing. Is that what you intended to say, that we have elected officials in Canada who are cognizantly, knowingly working for foreign interests?
Just focusing on what I've reported, the 11 candidates running in 2019 were targeted by the Toronto Consulate Network. So that's the Chinese Communist Party foreign influence arm. Some, we're talking about documents, some are, according to CSIS investigations, wittingly part of this Chinese influence effort. That is, yes, they know. And some would not be aware that they are being targeted by compromised individuals that are working for Beijing. Again, this is all with the ultimate objective. Here's a quote: subtle but effective foreign interference in the Greater Toronto Area. If CSIS says it's subtle but effective, then you can take from that someone in Canadian intelligence at senior levels has said that China's interference networks targeting Canadian parliamentarians are effective, have been effective. Not only that, but they're predicted to be more persistent and pervasive in future elections.
We'll get to the future elections in a bit, but I'm still staggered by the implication of what you've reported. Like some time ago, when did your report about these 11 campaigns come out?
The first report was November 7th, and then further documentation on this Greater Toronto Area Network was filed in a parliamentary hearing that resulted from my November 7th report. So that led to more reporting, more granular reporting by myself a few days prior to Christmas. And you and your listeners can infer, as I said, I'm working very actively on
That was
further
me doing the
reports
scary
that will
music,
dig
Dimitri.
deeper with more granular detail right now.
Okay, investigative reporting can take a lot of time, but you dropped a bombshell in November that our democracy has been compromised at the federal level, and that potentially there's elected leaders governing right now who are under some kind of sway from a foreign government. What I want to know is,
I can't believe,
as soon as that
unbelievable, the idea that a foreign government might have influence on our government. Oh my goodness. This is explosive, folks. I've never even considered this. Have we asked our superiors in the U.S. State Department what they think about this? We need to get them to help protect us. We need to get the U.S. involved in this. In our democracy, our truly representative, fucking wonderful democracy. Again, first just setting aside the idea that, there are many countries that have measurable influence, not just on politicians, but on our actual policy, starting with the United States of America, but Israel, Saudi Arabia, numbers of countries that we can point to having genuine measurable influence over our political leaders and over the policies that they set out. Just setting aside that, again, where are all these pro CPC? This man says there's 11 candidates. Who out there? I literally do not see anywhere in our media or our political class anyone making the case that we need to cooperate with China. I wish they were. Again, I think this is a stance that I happen to agree with. I know it makes me a crazy radical outside the mainstream in this country, again, that I don't think we should be constantly antagonizing this rising global superpower. And I don't think we should be attaching ourselves to the dying, decaying U.S. empire. I happen to agree with that. I think maybe in terms of climate change, the threat of global conflict, future pandemics, I think it's probably something that we should work with China on. We should foster a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding and cooperation. That's my crazy radical belief. I know it's totally outside the mainstream of Canadian media or politics, but if they've subverted our democracy so badly and they're funding this devious China threat network, is funding all these candidates, where's literally one political candidate that is making this claim, that is suggesting that we work with or cooperate with China in any way, or pushing back about any of the scary stories about human rights or any of that stuff? No one is doing this, Jesse. No one is doing this. No wonder this country is no wonder this story is a dud. What are we supposed to be scared about here? No one in this fucking country, in the media or political establishment, is doing this. So what is the difference? What is the fundamental difference? Whether these 11 candidates are actually on the take from the CPC in the first place, which, as far as how it's been described so far, just sounds like hearsay coming from our intelligence agencies so far. That's what it sounds like to me, with no actual evidence. Every time actual evidence is discussed, this guy is this cagey, I can't possibly give away the sources of my in-depth reporting on this. There's no fucking evidence other than what the CSIS is saying, what our intelligence community is saying about this. And where is anyone in this country with any kind of a media or political platform arguing that we tone down on the escalating, conflicting kind of rhetoric with China, or we tone down on the accusations of human rights violations, or we encourage this environment of cooperation and understanding? No one's doing that. No one is doing that. So what exactly is the problem here? What is the problem? The country doing this tar sands project should learn from the country doing an absolute majority of global photovoltaic installations. Total lunacy. And again, talking about other countries interfering in our politics, the tar sands is a great example. Who are all these companies that are profiting from the endless resource extraction projects in this country, in the tar sands? Is it Canadian companies? Is it Canadian communities? Who is profiting from the tar sands? Who is profiting from these pipeline projects? These endless pipeline projects. You know, it's not Canadian. It's not the Canadian government. It's U.S. corporations. It's Saudi Arabia. I even think you could make a case that China is one of the countries that's profiting from these pipeline projects. I think there are Chinese oil companies that are involved in that. Maybe we could have that discussion, but we're not even doing that. We're not even talking about that. But the Ligma Group, is the implication just that Trudeau is a communist stooge or something? This painfully stupid shit. I mean, it kind of is when they're saying like, oh, they mysteriously went away. This story mysteriously went away and Trudeau denied it. Like that is the implication, right? When they're not spelling it out. They're not making any accusations, but they're saying who's Trudeau really working for here? What is this about? Yeah, I do. Like I said, I do believe there is a Chinese oil and gas company that's involved in the Coastal GasLink pipeline. You know, if we wanted to talk about Chinese influence in our government or our culture, maybe we could talk about that. But that's not what this story is about. And it's certainly not just China doing that. Again, it's predominantly U.S.-based corporations, oil and gas corporations, Exxon, etc., that are involved in exploiting our natural resources like this. So if we wanted to have a conversation about foreign governments interfering in our politics or our society, maybe that's what the conversation could be about. That's not what this is. This is like warmed over McCarthyist horse shit.
Comes out, why are we all waiting for you? There's a finite list of possible MPs. Wouldn't this be motivating every journalist on this beat, covering Ottawa, covering foreign affairs, covering China, to be trying to figure out who CSIS has on their list of compromised candidates? Like, shouldn't this be an all hands on deck situation?
That's a great question. I mean, I can say that I know that there are senior reporters trying to chase things down, and I agree with you fully. It's a file of great urgency. You know, why people came forward to me. Why has the reports, a few very consequential reports, gone out without names on them? Well, there was an urgency to put out that information from my perspective. There was also plans to keep following the logical course of the information we reported and to name names and to get deeper. And that's exactly what we're doing. I think most of your readers probably get it, and you do too, that in the course of very challenging investigations, there are obstacles and hurdles that come into your way. But if you have the weight of public interest behind what you're reporting, you keep going, and you do have a duty to the public to name names. And that's where I'm going. Why aren't others able to, confirm certain aspects? All I can tell you is that I understand that, again,
the shit about naming names is literally from right out of McCarthyist language as well, right? Talking about foreign influence while they permanently changed their website colors to the Ukrainian flag. Is that what they did? Is that what that is? That's not a coincidence? Yeah, maybe we've talked endlessly about the Canadian-Ukrainian connection. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. When we're talking about foreign governments or societies interfering in our politics. Canada actually just forced China out of all oil and gas extraction as part of a U.S.-led effort to divest from state-controlled extraction companies. Well, there you go. Then what are these fucking guys even complaining about then? The only oil and gas companies that can operate in Canada must be privately owned. Good. See, there we go. Problem solved. Problem solved. Yeah, okay, that's always been their colors. But we, like, when we're talking about both Canada's involvement in foreign governments and foreign governments involved in us, Ukraine might be a good place to start as well. But not something that's very interesting to Jesse, I guess.
And people that provide information are at risk. There are a lot of considerations and sensitivities around, what I have reported and how it needs to be vetted. It takes a while to get there, but this is only the second or third inning, I believe, in a 9-inning story. And I believe it's a story that is perhaps one of the most important corruption stories in Canadian history.
I mean, things can happen very slowly and
This is so
information trickles
embarrassing.
out. But then when enough pressure is applied and often going public, like breaking the news, suddenly things can happen very quickly. And one way that things might have gone quickly, besides other media getting on the story as well, is if opposition parties were to say, this is a very concerning report. We want to know who these MPs are. But then it occurred to me, if each of the parties had candidates affected, then they might not be so quick to demand answers and transparency.
Is it the Canadian Lib Q? I mean, it's definitely the Canadian Russia Gate starting, right? And I don't doubt in the next election cycles, as the pivot to China comes, they'll be talking more and more in the U.S. About Chinese interference in the electoral process as well. I don't doubt that for a moment. In Canadian history, this is just this is so fucking embarrassing. I have secondhand embarrassment from listening to this. What's up, Squatch? Yeah, we have an opposition party in Canada. I only see one team. That's right. We have one team. The team that works for all these oil and gas companies and old growth logging and the telecoms and the grocery monopolies. And they do their little kayfabe little arguments in our parliament. And they have the Social Democrat wing and the Liberal wing and the Conservative wing. And they do their little, whatever the fuck they do down in Ottawa, their little song and dance routine, while the exact same exploitative and genocidal process continues unabated. Maybe we should worry about whether we even have a democracy in the first place. That could be an interesting story that Jesse could cover. Before we start talking about this dangerous threat of Chinese interference in our democracy, maybe we could explore the idea that we don't even live in a fucking democracy in the first place. Maybe that would help. It's weird to see people just stoked to do all the build up to World War II shit again, rounding up undesirables, all of it. We're just on the exact same path. Like there's no getting around that. And people that should know better and should have been able to have the ability to learn from history are just like, yep, this is A-okay to me, and they're perpetuating it knowingly. Fucking bizarre. Canada Health left $11 billion unspent last year in the middle of a whole ass plague. That seems like a big corruption story. Yeah, or in Ontario, in Ontario that's now being privatized. I don't know if you're referring to the same thing, Carrier Wave, with Doug Ford. Like Doug, literally underspending federal funds during a pandemic and then privatizing the healthcare system when it inevitably fucking gets pushed to the brink of collapse. Maybe we could talk about that story, right? Who are the companies that are going to benefit from the privatization of Canadian healthcare? Is it Chinese companies? Somehow I doubt it. Somehow I doubt it that they're going to be the ones benefiting from that process. No, this is... Okay, thanks, Carrie Ray, for clarifying. This is federal on top of Dofo's shit. Rewritten or one-sided Western perspective version of history is what's taught in schools in the West. I mean, but what... The amazing thing to me, Squatch, is that I thought it was still in a basic understanding, like the whole double genocide theory was Holocaust, at least Holocaust revisionism. I thought up until quite recently, propagating double genocide theory about this USSR and the Nazis was an accepted, understood form of Holocaust revisionism. And now it's just reality. Now it's just completely bipartisan, accepted reality across the political spectrum, from the most extreme reactionaries to our social democrat and anarchist friends. Really strange to me. Really strange to me that still, and that this Russia-Ukraine conflict has been the major escalator of that. This idea of double genocide theory has just become accepted fact. This totally revisionist version of history. Really fucking dangerous.
Well, I think there is something to what you're saying. There's a committee hearing that resulted from the reports that I started on November 7th, where we've heard from conservative members and NDP members saying exactly that question. How bad is this problem? Who are these 11 MPs? And, I think one of the challenges is that it's so urgent. The allegations are so powerful and, it's so complex what I'm saying is going on that it's not easy to question the government as information trickles out, as it sometimes happens in these stories. And I think you're very familiar with the WE file, how new information comes to light and then it becomes a big deal in the government. But I think the WE file, we could probably more point to one government and even one family in government than a lot of others. This isn't even a scoop, really. Look, I've seen the information that, of course, this is not only one party, it's all major parties that are targeted not only by the PRC, but other nations. But I'm going to reiterate, the threat is by far the most the People's Republic of China and their United Front influence networks. And again, not just the federal government. We're talking from school boards to municipalities, provinces, up to the federal government.
They got everything. You think I'm just talking about candidates? We're through the looking glass here, people. That's literally what they're doing. The greatest threat. They got the school boards all the way down to goddamn dog catcher. You're free. You don't even know your neighbors. How much do you think you know your neighbors, folks? You're kind of the old neighbor. Well, they could be Chinese agents as well. You never know where they are. They can fit into any culture. The school board. Seriously, it's embarrassing and it's funny, but it's also just like fucking dangerous. Again, we live in like an unprecedented time of like anti-Asian rhetoric and hate crimes against Asian people, and this nonstop propaganda campaign against China has been a central instigator of that. And now we have our like independent progressive media mainstays in this country gleefully like throwing kindling on that and talking about a dangerous historic threat to our society and politics by these devious infiltrations on the part of Chinese nationals. Like this is what our progressive, liberal, independent media journalists are out there propagating. Like what the fuck? Seriously. And as I keep saying, like they're fear-mongering about this, but I'm going to continue holding this viewpoint that it should not be an extremist, radical position to say we need to be working with the Chinese government and not deliberately, constantly antagonizing them. We need to have a spirit of cooperation and understanding and friendship, similar to how we did in the early 90s when we made that movie with Donald Sutherland about Bethune, which we've talked about before. This is when we had like an actual like bilateral relationship forming with China. And like, why can't we just, there's literally no one in our media space or politics suggesting that we even just go back to that point when we just treat this emerging global superpower as like a someone that we should be working with and cooperating with. No one is making this argument in this country that I know of, that I'm aware of. No one, not in our media, not even in our independent media. Certainly not in our politics, despite all this scaremongering. Certainly not in our fucking school boards or whatever else they think these devious communist agents are infiltrating. This is just pure it's pure McCarthyism. It's crazy. Ignoring all the measurable ways that yes, indeed, our government and our political system has been infiltrated by all kinds of foreign agents primarily Americans. But Israel is next on the fucking list. You know, the country that's our beautiful ally that's out there, you know, once again, murdering kids at a historic clip right now. Voting, like electing openly fascist, genocidal governments that are like encouraging pogroms to take place against Palestinian people, you know, our close ally that we love and respect. And how we've suggested that any criticism of this country or any effort to boycott them is like akin to anti-Semitism. That's how dangerous it is to not even talk about this stuff, but to dare to suggest that there should be some kind of boycott or some kind of system in place to try and hold this like criminal government accountable. And our prime minister talks about it like that's, you're basically a Nazi to want to do that. Maybe we should talk about how they've infiltrated our culture and our society. Maybe we should do that. But no, I don't think we want to do that on Canada land. These ghouls are literally pushing for a foreign agents registry. This is from last month. Liberals to consult public on merits of a foreign agent registry. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino speaks during a news conference in February in Ottawa. Mendicino said in an interview that the government will consult the public on whether Canada should follow the lead of key allies, including the United States and Australia, in establishing a registry. And again, will we be, that would be my question, if we establish such a registry at the behest of our strong allies in the United States, will we be registering any potential foreign agents that are from the United States? Somehow I doubt that. Somehow I doubt it. When will this Chinese infiltration discourse become full-on anti-communism and turn against the Canadian left? Well, fortunately for the Canadian left, such as it is, they're all in agreement with the anti-China rhetoric as well. So no problem there. We can look at some of our like as close as we get to mainstream Canadian leftist journalism in this country, even people that I admire and respect very much, but who have completely swallowed all of these stories about this Chinese threat, who are often, you know, advocating for like the balkanization of China, and are constant critics of China, and refuse to accept the possibility that China is indeed engaged in the process of like building socialism right now, using the material means and the specific context applicable to their culture. Like anyone in our left institutions, in the media or academia in this country, are fully on board with this anti-China narrative already. You know, I'll keep saying it. It's just strange to me. Like, I feel weird being like I'm one of the only fucking people in this country with any kind of a platform that's taking this position, which should me again. I'm just going to keep saying it because it makes me feel insane. But this position that I don't think should be like radical or extremist, or certainly not anything that we need to have these like McCarthyist investigations into this possibility. I think what the position that I'm advocating for is a fucking no-brainer. It's the peace position. It's the position that wants to have less conflict and more shared prosperity in this future century. You know, it's frustrating to me that no one else in this country seems to be making the same argument. No one with a platform. And contributing to this McCarthyist campaign is just fucking inexcusable. Let's hear more of this thing that's driving me fucking insane with anger.
Indigenous bands. I'm telling you, Jesse, the United Front threat networks are about influencing essentially any powerful and influential person from government, business, academia. The Chinese Communist Party is seeking to get close to people that can influence opinion, policy, and politics in Canada.
I need to ask you so much more about that as to like why they're doing this, to what end, and how it's all happening. But I have one last question just about how this story has played out so far, and it's just some things that are troubling me about, I guess, just the lack of pressure and speed with which new revelations, have not been coming forward. Do you think it has anything to do with the Prime Minister himself throwing cold water on your story? Part of what you reported is that Trudeau was briefed about this, and as far as we know, didn't do anything about it.
Well, as far as we know, but why? Why? You must ask yourself why. Who benefits from Trudeau just dropping this? It's almost like he's one of them. Oh my God. How weird of China to get friendly with people. And this is another thing, Squatch Drew. Like, isn't what a lot of this is just like basic diplomacy? Do we send diplomats and other people, Canadian nationals around the country, into other countries and communities and advocate for our values and advocate for our vision of democracy and try to make deals for Canadian-based mining companies, etc.? Isn't this what just countries do, like to try and influence global politics? How is this any different? We don't think the United States of America engages in this? Do we think that maybe the United States of America engages in this kind of practice of promoting its government and its viewpoint to other countries? Wow, it's just fascinating to think about. This is what I don't understand. This is what I don't understand. This is basic diplomacy. And which Canada itself engages in all over the fucking world, and which America owns and controls the entire world. That's what imperialism is. It's bizarre to me, this viewpoint, which seems to be held by most people in this country.
And he refuted that. He denied it. He said no intelligence briefing happened about Chinese funding of candidates. And, I think that the casual reader might be forgiven for is he saying that the whole story is bullshit? Or is this some very specific semantic excuse? Why are we having a conversation about what Trudeau knew and when, as opposed to what the hell we're going to do about this?
What did he know and when did he know it?
Do you think that the Prime Minister was effective at essentially slowing this down?
Here.
There were a lot of good thoughts in that question. And so to the first one, I'd start by saying that
talking
the
about
Prime Minister...
academia, I mentioned our academia, for whatever passes for left-wing thought in academia in Canada, the vast majority that I've seen is CP China bad. They're China bad people. Again, what are we even worried about? Apparently this influence campaign is not going that well. It doesn't seem to be having much impact on the people in this country. So why are you fear-mongering about it? Yeah, just imagine if the U.S. funded foreign candidates and governments. It's just unthinkable. Or if fucking Canada did. As I've said, in Venezuela, in Haiti. What's the Lima Group? The Lima Group is just Canada and a bunch of Latin American countries arbitrarily deciding who the president of Venezuela is. And we're fear-mongering about this devious infiltration in the Canadian government and all levels of Canadian society and the school boards and academia. It's just fucking unbelievable. The West wants to spread their propaganda without a diplomatic core via mainstream manipulation and bribery. China just uses the existing legal structures to share their viewpoint. Yeah, and just the idea of even sharing their viewpoint has become so offensive to these people. It's somehow devious or scary for them to be hey, here's our perspective of this event that you're slandering us about. Jesus Christ.
Minister's response at the end of the day to this threat and to this story that reveals the threat will be the most important of anyone in government, because the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office at the end of the day will have the power on whether Canada will
they're implying Trudeau is like a communist Chinese agent. Like that's the implication of what they're saying here. Again, this is our biggest mainstream, our biggest independent, like progressive media establishment that exists. China's assisting with the development of African countries, but that's our region to explore and develop. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Meanwhile, citizens are getting long COVID effects and get to deal with it. Must fixate on China and the school boards, though. Yeah, while China tried desperately to avoid making COVID worse and shutting it down, which we refused to do. Jesus Christ, this is so much worse than I imagined. There's so much more to listen to as well.
Will follow the lead of Australia, which is what Canada's panel of national security parliamentarians are recommending to the Prime Minister and the Liberal government, that Canada should be following Australia's example to this very similar threat to their democracy and instituting a new Foreign Agent Registry Act and laws. And to color my answer, I've reported that this bipartisan panel with access to sensitive national
Australia,
security
the US
records
could.
has been recommending such actions for, I believe it's 3 or more years now.
And as we talked about with VJ, Australia as well, China, their number one trading partner and their neighbor. And at the behest of the U.S. State Department, this is the belligerent behavior that they're engaging in. Foreign Agent Registry Act. Great. Yeah. Great. I really like where this is going. No, it's not looking better than the U.S. CSRM. And as I've been saying, it's like even the few things that maybe separated Canada from the U.S., like our national healthcare system, that's going away too. So get ready for that.
Very specific, Jesse. Australia is an exemplar. Your readers can go to one of these redacted reports and find that. And that, Canada's national security is threatened. Our democracy is facing a threat of erosion from these very aggressive games, as Mr. Trudeau called them. And yet...
Yes, let's, like Australia, spend billions on U.S. submarines to destroy their biggest trade partner. Brilliant strategy. Yeah, I think we should be following them. Thank you. Thank you to Jesse and Sam for this fucking hard-hitting piece. This is definitely what we should be doing.
Circling back to my sources that came forward to me, they're saying, where's the action? There's ample evidence, there's no action. So has Mr. Trudeau, through media tactics of the Prime Minister's office, succeeded in maybe throwing some mud in the water, or, circling back to a metaphor, putting an obstacle in the way of the reporting or in the way that Canadians would receive it? I think that's the right question to ask. Whether, what was a very semantic parsing that ended up as a general denial, well, from my own experience, that's what I was hearing from people. And if they had that impression, they're dead wrong. Because at the end of the day, if you really parse the Prime Minister's responses, it seems to me that he's saying, using his voice, I was never informed that Beijing funded federal candidates. Well, Jesse, this was a complex story about a network being funded, and we never reported that the Prime Minister was told Beijing funded directly 11 candidates. I do think there's some parsing going on, and I do think the Prime Minister's office is capable of such parsing.
Well, we know that, and there's a history of this, and sometimes when their back is against the wall, it's not even slippery language. They'll just lie, and they did that in the SNC Lavalin revelation from the Globe and Mail. They just said the story was false. The story was not false. This has been the playbook again and again. But yeah, it can have the effect of being read as sort of a blanket. There's nothing to see here. The media.
So they're accusing Trudeau of lying.
And I wonder if that's not.
And just saying they're like hiding the fact that this infiltration is happening.
I think at least some people probably took that away.
Serious question.
All I can say is that
serious question.
Anyone that's listening.
How is what the theory that they are promoting here? Unless I'm crazy. Jesse, if you end up watching this segment, maybe you can clear this up for me. The theory that you're promoting in here, though, seems to be that Trudeau is somehow like that this infiltration into our all levels of our society and government is going on. That Trudeau is at least allowing it to happen. You know, you're kind of how is this theory any different from what these Canadian convoy people are promoting? These theories about them, it's all the exact same shit. Trudeau is some devious communist agent working with China to do first the fixation was vaccines. Now they've switched. They've kind of evolved to talk about this digital ID passport and Chinese social credit system and this kind of stuff. How is this any different? Jesse should be working with these convoy types. Clearly, they believe in the same thing about how the government's been infiltrated by communist agents working at the behest of Beijing. So you'd think that they could get together and come together on this and start actually working together and getting some stuff done. Zero daylight between these two theories, which are promoted by these different kind of ideological groups.
Can have confidence that this is all that I've been working on, getting out more stories with more details, and there's so much more to report. There's also a lot of obstacles. This is a story of great urgency, and I don't think you even have to infer to say that there's people in government that don't want these very specific stories coming out.
All right, now let's talk about what actually is happening. What you've described is the United Front, which we know that this is alive and active around the world. This is Beijing's foreign interference wing, I suppose. You report that they have compromised Canada from school boards to federal elections, and you describe, quote, a growing sense of elite capture and even corruption within the Canadian government. So let me start by asking, why is China doing this? What do they want?
What the experts have told me, and I've reported, whether it's my book or touching on it in these recent reports and other interviews, is that China, at the end of the day, is fully focused on protecting the regime of the Chinese Communist Party. So we're talking about the men at the very top of China, the politicians that rule that country. They're seeking to protect their interests. And the United Front,
Crazy.
I think we've got the
Can you
bandwidth
imagine
to
the
get a
country
little
doing
bit
that?
into what's behind it. This is the United Front.
You see the big difference
and
too, right? This is how the kind of trick that gets played on us in like Western liberal democracy, where the implication here is that this is bad because all the people at the top of China they're working at the behest of the party and trying to make things better. But because there's this kind of like fake ideological distinction with our ruling class, we pretend that it's somehow different. But like all the people, the elites of Canadian society and American society are, yes, working to continue the status quo that they benefit from and that benefits their country and their society and their business. Like because some of them are private, it's like private interests. We pretend that they're not connected to the state, even though they're deeply implicated in upholding the status quo. Zero difference, except when you look at the actual fucking values of the people that are in the socialists or self-described socialists. There's actually things that you can admire and respect in there, even if you don't think it's being achieved properly. China works to make their party stronger. The West works to make our billionaires stronger. Well, that's the thing. There's this ideological coherence in our ruling class, even if they might claim that they're independent or belong to different parties. Ultimately, all the basics about how our economy operates and how our culture operates that they all benefit from, they're all in agreement on. And they all go to the same Ivy League colleges. They're all part of the same weird secret societies in there. They all go to the same cocktail parties, even if they might vote for different political parties, right? And we pretend that that's somehow different. And we say, well, Chinese ruling class, they're all working for the benefit of China. Oh, that's so fucking devious. while ignoring our own the way that we engage in literally the exact or every country engages in the exact same fucking behavior. It's really ridiculous.
This comes from international experts. It comes from the top diplomat from Taiwan in Ottawa. The United Front is a Leninist.
Folks, you think it's just the intelligence agencies? The top diplomat of Taiwan is saying this. Did you know that? The top diplomat of Taiwan is saying this. So that pretty much that shows you that it's for sure true. If the top diplomat of Taiwan is saying this bizarre anti-China conspiracy theory, well, then there must be something to it. I wonder if the top diplomat in Taiwan has any interactions with the CIA. I wonder, or the U.S. State Department. I wonder if Taiwan's top diplomat is influenced in any way through his or her interactions with the United States intelligence community or government. I wonder. I guess we'll never know. And sources on I know that another mainstream, the big outlet that's been doing a lot of research on this is the Epoch Times. Maybe that's another outlet that Jesse could work with. The Epoch Times has been all over this as well. There's all kinds of Falun Gong members that would happily repeat the same stories. They're all saying the same thing. Very troubling, folks. Very troubling.
Political tool that is just it's a powerful, what it's called, political warfare. It's about you. So we're talking about the Politburo here. The most powerful men in China have unrolled a strategy for decades where it's about picking out your most powerful enemy and making allyships, becoming allied with the enemies of your enemy until you can get a weight behind your policy. And when you draw in people to become part of your united front, that gives you the power to eradicate your most serious enemy. And then the people within that you've drawn close to you in this Leninist political war tool, it's all about power and protection of the regime. That's the core of it.
What was that? Was it a Leninist political war tool? This is incredible.
Front, I think we've got the bandwidth to get a little bit into what's behind it. This is the United Front, and this comes from international experts. It comes from the top diplomat from Taiwan in Ottawa. The United Front is a Leninist political tool that is just it's a powerful, what it's called, political warfare. It's about you.
Imagine.
So we're talking about the Politburo here. The most powerful men in China have unrolled a strategy for decades where it's about picking out your most powerful enemy and making allyships, becoming allied with the enemies of your enemy until you can get a weight behind your policy. And when you draw in people to become part of your united front, that gives you the power to eradicate your most serious enemy. And then the people within that you've drawn close to you in this Leninist political war tool, it's all about power and protection of the regime. That's
this Leninist political war tool of making creating diplomatic relationships with enemies of your greatest rival, which has only ever happened in this circumstance. This is the only time this has ever happened. This is the only time this has ever happened in history. Engaging them with where they do this in order to promote the interests of their state. Unbelievable. This Leninist political war tool. Are these fucking people for real? I'm serious now. This is truly astounding. You're talking about, this is our media in Canada. These are the minds. telling the big stories about geopolitics in this country. I hear Leninist political war tool right here. This idea, again, what this guy's describing is just basic diplomacy and countries, trying to advance their own interests, even in the context of being faced with these big global opponents to what they're trying to do. And just engaging in this basic process of trying to succeed and trying to grow your economy and provide a better living standard for the people that live in your country. Like, this is just what geopolitics is. This is the resistance. That's right. Oh, fuck. And thank you, Pete Cicada. In the system with a global hegemon, this is not any kind of serious analysis. This is the amazing thing. They're describing these basic processes, which in any single thing that they've mentioned, we can look at the US engaging in that exact behavior, both in Canada and around the world, much more belligerently and much more aggressively. And with not just getting 11 political candidates on the payroll, but literally getting millions of people killed in the process, starting proxy wars, funding Contras and death squads all throughout Latin America and Africa, overthrowing governments, invading other countries, bombing hospitals and schools and weddings and funerals. Like, how is this a serious analysis? I know I must believe that both of these fellows have access to like information about how the United States has engaged with the rest of the world over the last 70 years. It's not hard to find this information. And they're talking about China as if they're the country that invented this kind of concept. And to what's the result? We're talking about 11 candidates. What has actually happened in our government or culture that has benefited them? It's whataboutism. They're trying to advance their interests Leninistly. That's right. That's what they're doing. Folks, I got to take a brief time out from listening to this. We're only halfway through this goddamn thing. I just keep on. It's way, way worse than I was imagining. It's really, I think I've found a lot of this stuff kind of funny listening to it, but it's genuinely kind of alarming. It's genuinely kind of alarming that this is the kind of discourse
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
About this amongst like progressive liberals. Thank you, John. And again, this is our independent media establishment. I just want to look at this. Here's Canadaland, which we've been listening to on patreon.com. 2,980 patrons. I don't know if there's like an actual like number on that. I don't know what the number is. Most popular is $9 a month. Almost 3,000 patrons. Canadaland's doing pretty well. I do not have 3,000 patrons. What I do have, though, is you, the community that watches this program. So if you're, as I am, kind of despondent and alarmed by the state of progressive media in this country or what passes for it, and you want to support the work that I do here on twitch.tv, please subscribe to TRRS for $5 per month. Can I interest you in a number of tiny little pictures for the low, low price of $5 per month? You too can have all these amazing tiny little pictures, which you can use on twitch.tv. And every single subscription, everyone that gift subs or friend coin or tips or whatever, all of it really, really helps me keep this content on the air. And yeah, if like me, you're concerned about the state of our discourse in this country and you want to support an alternative viewpoint,
You can count on me. You're gonna
That
have
is
good
how you
old
do it.
Rob to talk you through all this.
I don't have... And listen, if I get anyone from the Chinese government to get involved with promoting me or the work that I do or subsidizing this program, I'll be upfront about that. I'm not going to hide that. You know, maybe if I can get to that point, I won't have to rely on the community as much anymore. I would prefer that, believe me. Like I said, I know they have resources. This guy's fear-mongering about it, about all this devious infiltration. Well, I would like to have some of that infiltration. And if I do, I won't have to ask you for subscriptions on this program. And thank you, Lennon Smesh. Thank you, Lennon Smesh, for the gifted sub. I really appreciate that and your support.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
China has infiltrated my bits TRRS libface.
Thank you, Sophisticated Pills, for the 200 friend coin. Yeah, I have about another 45 minutes of the stream, so I'm gonna try and see if we can raise some support for the stream a little bit more. I got to take a little bit more time to try and guilt you and shame you into subscribing to this program. And then maybe we can listen to the rest of this really astounding Canada Land reporting.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Oh goodness, Don Dark Sony. Thank you so much, Don Dark Sony, for the 5 gifted subs. I really, really appreciate all the support from our friend Don Dark Sony, our subversive friend. Who is he? We don't know. It's a mystery. Perhaps Don Dark Sony is from the Chinese government. We certainly don't know that he isn't. And if so, I just want to say thank you. And I will say again, folks, for the very generous potential sub gifters out there, there is a brand new, I don't know if you've seen this, a brand new exciting alert.
You've
for
just
our
become
generous
an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
For our extremely generous 10 sub gifters, there is a brand new exciting alert, which everyone's talking about, which you can only see through the extremely generous 10 sub gifters. And I'm not putting pressure on anyone on that. I'm simply saying that if you want to see the exciting new alert that everyone's talking about, the whole platform of Twitch is talking about it, that's how you do it. Thank you so much to Gen X Bushy as well. Thank you Gen X Bushy, for the 5 gifted subs as well. Very much appreciated. I'm pretty sure Gen X Bushy is not a Chinese national or a member of the Chinese government. I think Gen X Bushy is just a generous man who likes Steely Dan and a lot of other great rock bands throughout the ages. Stay tuned for the second half, brought to you by the Rousseau Institute for Western Destabilization. See, we got to get the Chinese government to fund that. We got to get the Chinese government to fund that. Our think tank. But it is cool if they are. It'd be a lot cooler if you were. That's right. How do we get in touch with the CPC? I actually do. There are a few CPC members that follow me on Twitter, like Chinese diplomats. I think the ambassador to Cuba follows me. And there's another somewhat prominent Chinese diplomat on Twitter that follows me as well. In theory, I could reach out to the Chinese ambassador to Cuba and try to get them to fund TRRS. I could do that. Or maybe do something kind of cool, like arrange some kind of a meeting place or something in a parking lot. That would be cool, right? Don't want to talk about this over the phone. I could do something like that. Not that we aren't already on a government watch list, but lol. If I'm not on the watch list, then these people are not doing their fucking jobs. I'll tell you that much. Do better. I'm literally out here every day saying this stuff and doing yacht rock dances. I think I got one Chen Wanhua retweet, although he didn't follow. I didn't get the Chen follow, unfortunately. How did you get in contact with any diplomats from Cuba or CPC members? Just from talking about China on here and then sharing the video on Twitter, and I got a bunch of retweets. It got retweeted by posted my way into connections to the CPC. A couple of prominent Chinese media people and diplomats retweeted that. A clip that I did with VJ last year. I should do another clip where VJ talks about China in the previous interview and see if I can get a couple more. So, folks, we got 1 minute and a half left in this hype train.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
May high-speed hype rail development come to you in the new year.
Thank you, Measure Bread. Thank you so much for the 360 friend coin. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Measure Bread looks like a possible community member that would love a gift sub. I'm sure Measure Bread would appreciate a gift sub. He wants all the tiny little pictures. This is the only Twitch channel whose host is mutual followers with multiple, or maybe one or two, prominent Chinese diplomats. This is the only such platform on Twitch. Doesn't that sound like something that we should be supporting?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Comrade Social Distancing, for the gifted sub. I very much appreciate that. And so does our new friend, Measure Bread. We got another 30 seconds. Do we hear level 4? Again, I don't want to alarm anyone, but there's a very exciting new alert for some of our most generous, most elite Friendship Triangle members. The only show on Twitch where the host may or may not be a Leninist political war tool. Well, that's the thing. I'm not going to be cagey about this stuff. I'm very open and honest about this. I'm very open and honest about all these things. I'll happily explain it if anyone ever wants to talk to me about it. I'll happily explain my controversial viewpoints on this. You can see the tiny Lenin war tool on the shelf behind him. It's actually not tiny anymore, Squatch. It's the real deal now.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Meow Mix. Thank you, Meow Mix. So kind of you. The 5 gifted subs from Meow Mix. Heck yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's not actually the same shirt that I'm wearing in that alert. It's a different one. TRRS is an arm of the China Threat Network. I think I might have to make that a new, like, in the bottom I have the little slogan. You know, every week I try to change it up. I think that's maybe a good next one. The China Threat Network. It sounds so sinister. It sounds like a fucking James Bond thing. Like, it sounds like literally only something that could be dreamt up by one of these fucking imperialist intelligence freaks. Squatcher, did you see the new design for merch? It's so fucking cool. When you're going to wear this shirt, you're going to get people literally putting you on a list. That's how subversive this shirt is. You may not be able to cross the border wearing this shirt without getting in trouble. That's how good it is. Bring it to the DMV. Hell yeah. We love it. The Chinese threat network. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's listen to a little bit more of this thing. I don't know if we can get through the whole thing, but thank you again, folks, for supporting the channel, supporting the stream. I really appreciate it. I really do. I'm happy to be able to have a little bit of a platform. I know it doesn't really rival Canada Land or Global News or the CBC, but, you know, it makes me feel, maybe I'm not accomplishing anything doing this bullshit, but it makes me feel somewhat fulfilled that I'm at least using what little platform I have to advocate a sort of different viewpoint about geopolitics and foreign policy in this country. And it would not be possible without the people that are in this community and that watch this stream and support it. So seriously, thank you. Let's hear more of this hard-hitting investigative journalism.
The core of it, to put it visually, they're rolling out that system into other countries around the world where they attempt to, through just very subtle means, infiltrate democracies with this. We can call it the biggest big tent political party in the world, is the Chinese Communist Party, trying to use its political system in other nations.
I have to tell you, it sounds kind of grandiose and generalized. Can you take this down to earth for me? And like when we're talking about things as granular as like a school board, why would they want to have influence over a school board?
Sure. So a very granular detail in my first report.
They have this really scary, dangerous idea that they don't want people taught in schools that their country is like basically worse than Nazi Germany and something that we should hate and fear. Ooh, this crazy idea. Can you imagine how devious you have to be to maybe try and say, like, maybe we can teach good things about China in the school system and not to teach people to, like, hate and detest and fear our country and our society? What a crazy idea.
Intelligence briefs said that in 2014, the Toronto consulate...
Intelligence briefs, that's all these fucking guys have. This is where they get all this information. I read it in an intelligence briefing. Oh, fucking good for you. That's what passes for investigative journalism in this country when it comes to these foreign policy issues. Oh yeah, I went to a security conference and they were very clear about this. This is just McCarthyism. Like, this is identical to the kind of language used about the Soviet Union throughout the Cold War. And I've been talking about now for over 2 years on this platform about the new Cold War that we're in. And if anyone ever doubted that kind of rhetoric, I think it's pretty fucking clear when this is the language that's being used. Where we're going with all this.
Transferred $1 million Canadian to community group proxies in the Toronto area so that they could put on fake protests in support of Chinese state education systems within the Toronto District School Board.
Fake protests.
This is a perfect question and a perfect example, Jesse. The United Front Work Department, according to the U.S. State Department and other nations around the world,
according to the U.S. State
uses
Department,
Confucius Institutes as one of its soft power influence tools around the world. So the Confucius Institutes that China wanted to be involved in Toronto District School Boards are a part of the United Front. The community group leaders who put on these fake protests in front of the district school board offices in 2014
of course,
are part of the United Front.
No Chinese person that actually supports their country
same leaders that you
would
can
of their
see
own
on
volition ever
videos
protest
of those
anything
protests
or support
are
what they do.
allegedly the people running Chinese so-called police stations, or their network associates are allegedly involved in Chinese police stations. What's more, these very same community leaders allegedly would be proxies that facilitate clandestine transfers into Canada's political system. So in that example, you can see three things. We're talking about the school board where China is seeking influence, community groups involved in fake protests, allegedly receiving $1 million Canadian to fund these protests, police stations influence
talk
of
about
Canada's
fucking
political
projection.
system up to the federal level. I'm saying they can all be tied into very concretely some people in Toronto that are used by the Politburo and the United Front Work Department to meddle in Canada's affairs.
Well, we've talked a bit on this podcast before about this revelation about these police stations, these unofficial storefronts where, in fact, we're finding out that
the secret police
Beijing's
stations,
law enforcement has, this foreign presence leaning on
the secret
enemies
police stations,
of
folks.
the Chinese Communist Party, tracking down, criminals who are wanted by the party or by law enforcement in China, and using the fact that Canadian Chinese people have family back home, or some of them live between the two countries, to exert pressure and completely intruding on Canada's law enforcement sovereignty in doing so. That I kind of understand. I still don't understand. I know that the Confucius Institute, I know these schools, I know they're trying to change.
Doing a Control F Bolivia on the Canada Land catalog. I mean, there's no need carrier wave. Like I was saying, Justin Ling, who's connected to Canada Land, was famously, when the Bolivia situation was going on, was out there being like, folks, it's not a coup. He was one of these tutting, finger wagging. Oh, all the lefties are saying, no, it's not a coup. That's what Justin Ling of Canada Land was saying when Bolivia was happening.
Change the name and kind of rebrand them. What are the protests for? The allegedly fake protests? What's the purpose of those?
Yeah, so other countries have banned them because they say that the Confucius Institutes are part of, essentially, the Chinese Communist Party's foreign influence arm. It's propaganda. And so what can seem as, friendly as Chinese language lessons for free or something like that in Toronto or Vancouver or elsewhere in schools can be, according to Western intelligence, it's an arm of Chinese intelligence.
According to Western intelligence, yeah, with teaching people Mandarin. Listen to all this over and over again. According to the U.S. State Department, according to intelligence services, according to an intelligence memo that I read, it's literally just, as I've said repeatedly, fucking stenographers for the security state. That's all our journalism is. All of these allegations are directly, word for word, lifted from State Department memos. And we're complaining about other countries interfering in our fucking democracy? Oh, man. Yeah. Maybe next to Ukraine-style language ban. Maybe we'll start internment camps. That's not unthinkable. That's not unthinkable. That's where this rhetoric goes, right? Maybe we're not there yet, but if we do get to the point where there's open conflict with China, as many are predicting, even though, as I've pointed out before, they've been kind of failing to rise to the endless provocations that we're throwing their way in Taiwan and Xinjiang and Hong Kong and elsewhere. If conflict does actually end up breaking out, if we do end up going towards World War III, as we've been talking about on this program, that's where we're going to in the internment camp direction. That's where this kind of language goes. When we're talking about these, Mandarin courses are being arms of the intelligence apparatus and propaganda. Yeah, God forbid people learn Mandarin, be able to understand domestic Chinese news and not rely on Western translators, or just fuckheads like Adrian Zenz that don't even speak Mandarin, but are still presented like experts on China. The more they resist, the worse the provocations will get, for sure. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. I'm shocked China hasn't responded to provocation yet, but I'm glad they haven't. I think this is the inescapable conclusion that we've been coming to on this program over the last couple of weeks and months, really, since we've been doing it, is that this confrontation is inevitable. I hope that it's not. I hope it can be avoided. But it just feels like this global confrontation, this threat of global conflict is just fucking inevitable. Because Western imperialism is not going to allow another player to rise to the same level or surpass them on a global level. As we talked about with VJ, that's not even what China's interested in. A lot of these places like China just want to have what he called multilateralism, where they're able to make these kind of multilateral deals with one another, China and Africa, China and Latin America, etc. But that's not even going to be on the table, right? We're not going to allow that either. Because fuckheads like these are going to take any of these basic diplomatic efforts to establish ties in other nations and frame it as being this devious subversion that's going on. Because that's our property, obviously. Latin America is Canada's property. Africa is Canada's property. We're not going to allow them to make bilateral, peaceful deals with one another. That's not going to be acceptable to our ruling class. And these people are going to be cheerleading the escalation. And they're using this kind of language, which is going to lead us down a very dangerous path. I honestly think this report is planted to immediately be able to call anyone in public office who isn't all in on anti-China a Chinese spy. For sure. I mean, think about what's going to be said. And if a politician does actually manage to find a small amount of courage in this fucking country and make this case, we know what's going to be said about them. The seeds are being planted for that. This kind of language, this ends in public hearings. It ends in internment camps. This is sickening. It is neo-McCarthyism. It's just like this is McCarthyist language, this whole thing.
Trying to, through soft power and other more hard power espionage means, infiltrate both the education systems and the social fabric, the political fabric of other nations, starting at the school level. So that's why Confucius Institutes are of such importance to Beijing's international United Front plans. And what are these fake protests about? In 2014, there was a controversy around a number of people in the community said exactly what the Western intelligence agencies would say at a high level. They don't want to be subjected to what they believe is Beijing's propaganda in Toronto schools. So they were protesting to the school board. There were hearings where it was questioned, will the school board go forward and include these?
So this is what this guy is saying, that there were these courses teaching Mandarin to people. There's just people in the community that purely on their own volition, agreed with this stance from the intelligence community that these language programs were some devious arm of the propaganda or intelligence apparatus of the Chinese Communist Party, and held these hearings. And when Chinese people in these communities, presumably protested the potential cancellation of these language courses, or framing these language courses as being devious somehow, he goes out and calls them fake protests that are 100% paid for by the CPC. That's what this guy's saying. Yeah, we have Shen Yun literally sets up in the entrance of Save on Foods, but yeah, go after Confucius orgs that help immigrants. Yeah, exactly. We have Shen Yun ads fucking all over the place. That's okay though. That's fine. Marty, this shit is crazy. This is so much worse than I imagined it was going to be by many levels.
These Chinese state-linked schools are not. And so what the information that I reported on says, the consulate wanted to provide the superficial story that there's a lot of support for these schools within the broad community. And so that was what was behind these fake protests.
And of course, they're fake.
That
of course, there's no support
that
of the community.
are covertly proxies for the consulate.
Of course, any Chinese person that engages in a protest like that is not thinking from themselves. Of course, they're these brainwashed automatons, which get their programming from the CPC, and that forces them to go out and engage in this kind of activism. That's the only possible way, right? That's the only explanation.
You've said that you're getting this from a lot of sources, and the most recent bombshell, you're relying on CSIS documentation, but you've also said that people inside the United Front criminal networks, like United Front people themselves, are some of your best sources. Why would those people talk to you?
Well, that's right. Very specifically when we're talking about community groups getting funds from the consulate and using that, to put out fake protests or to take part in political or democratic activity in Canada, very specific people confirmed to me that they would have been aware of or in contact with people from the consulate that would have not only encouraged but pressured or tasked people in the community to appear at certain rallies or to appear when a leader from China arrived in Canada. Or
this is our friend Sam Cooper, and again, he's a J school graduate. This is the exact kind of person, and this is where the Chomskyist analysis comes in, right? This is the fucking exact kind of person that gets cultivated to have media platforms in this country. This is what J School churns out these fucking guys who, as I've been repeatedly pointing out, just end up serving as stenographers for the intelligence community and the U.S. State Department. And they literally just go to these security conferences. They write down what their superiors in the national security or an intelligence apparatus have to say. They get their little memos from the State Department or for these intelligence communities. They transcribe them into the newspaper and then they print them in the newspaper. That's what they teach you to do in J School in Canada.
or to appear in a counter capacity if Hong Kong Canadians were out, in Toronto and Vancouver in 2019 protesting for democracy in Hong Kong. People from the pro-Beijing side would not only show up, but I'm telling you, I have sources that say they were tasked to show up at such events.
Sources
so
from
these
who?
would be people that are admitting to me that they could have been leaders within what I'm calling the United Front Work Department, or another name for it, there's something called the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office.
Again, like someone's pointing out, we have 4% of our population is Chinese. The idea that, when there's these like ongoing Hong Kong protests, the idea that anyone would go out there and be actually against what these people are promoting, which is like less ties with China in Hong Kong, more ties with the US. They want Hong Kong to go back to being a colonial outpost of Western imperialism. And the idea that any Chinese person that would get out there and be like, we actually don't agree with this, we don't support this. Of course, the only way they would ever do so is if they're paid and financed by the CPC. That's the only way that anyone would ever actually agree to go out and engage in that kind of counter protest.
Which is
an
office within consulates worldwide that is involved in liaising with communities originating from China, but which Canadian intelligence documents that we reported on say is really, monitoring, using, and tasking, and really involved in espionage with or attempts to control diaspora communities. So yes, I have sources that have told me they're aware of very specific transactions and tasking from the consulate.
We can have a whole other conversation, Sam, about everything that's in your book, Willful Blindness. I don't think we have time for that today, but there is a connection point that I think will help me maybe do something that I've been struggling to do throughout this conversation, which is sort of like try to get my head around the big picture here.
Every time this guy talks, you're doing the Scott
to explain my understanding from your book and from talking to you and reading your reports as to like what is actually going on here. And
China's engaging in basic diplomacy.
Got it right or not. What I read in Willful Blindness is that essentially Canada has been compromised through its casinos by criminal networks from China. And this goes back decades. That organized crime rings saw Canada as sort of a soft target, a place to launder money, a place that they could use to park laundered money in real estate, as a commercial hub for international drug trade, human trafficking, and that Canada decided, the authorities decided to be willfully blind to this. They were bringing a lot of action into the casinos, and there was heavy pressure to kind of look the other way. There were all kinds of facets to this. There was a money lending operation happening out of Vancouver, ways in which the whole apparatus of gaming in Canada became kind of like a part of how criminal money gets laundered and reintroduced into the system, and that criminal network has a blurry line, that organized Chinese criminal network. There's a blurry line between it and state power in China. Am I okay so far?
That's entirely accurate. Yeah.
Okay, so it's one thing when you're reporting on organized crime, but this most recent round of reporting, things move much more into the political arena. And the best I can understand that is that this long-standing presence in Canada from these corrupting organizations is more effective than anybody knew previously. And it has been slowly exerting influence and working its way into Canadian institutions, into, like we say, school boards, perhaps municipal governments, and into federal governments. And maybe I'm thinking about things in too much of a meat and potatoes way to say, well, why do they want to do it? What do they get out of being in a school board? It seems like what the United Front wants, given the size of the diaspora community in Canada, given the fact that Canada is useful for all these other things, given that Canada is a player, albeit a small one in the world stage, the point in a macro sense is just to increasingly have power and influence for whatever China, for whatever Beijing might want on any given day. That might be with respect to the Meng case. That might be with respect to the Michaels. That might be with respect to anything that's going on. You want to be able to flick a switch and say,
Michaels,
there's public support for
folks.
Beijing's position on this.
Our beautiful boys.
The further you have worked your way into Canada and its institutions,
our beautiful,
the easier it is to
precious
do that.
boys.
And the goal here is just to get deeper and deeper in without anybody stopping it. Is that the big picture?
It sounds like
Jesse,
listening to
you
a
nailed
GTA
it.
parody radio
And
station.
I would say, there's examples to support that. But at the end of the day, Canada's political system, as you know, people might start at the school board and work their way up if they're a star to higher levels. So Beijing's influence efforts are aimed at Ottawa. They're aimed at Parliament Hill at the end of the day. But they're also aimed at provincial governments for specific reasons and for the reasons that politics is a great big ball of wax, where at the end of the day, whether you're involved at the school board level or in Parliament Hill, you'll have an opinion on whether it's okay to openly say what's happening in Xinjiang is a genocide. And so the more power you have politically in Canada, your voice will matter, whether
mods
you
will
vote
hate this.
to
The
support
mods
a UN
might
resolution on that
this.
point or not. Or when the government is trying to handle that most difficult case in recent history, the Michaels, and
Folks,
are
as
we
I've
going
been pointing out, like this guy's displaying the bravery. You can openly say that there's a genocide happening. Even in, as we've pointed out repeatedly, in the AP, in the Washington Post, they've done extensive reporting on this lately, talking about Xinjiang, and are literally like, yeah, there's not really much going on anymore. The Washington Post and the AP is saying this. I don't understand the disconnect where we still have to pretend that there's any integrity whatsoever to that claim. Any Western journalists that are going in there to tell a specific story about China, that's their whole strategy. That's their whole purpose going there, is to make it sound sinister and to propagate this theory, this idea. And the reporting is literally like, yeah, all these facilities where these de-radicalization facilities and these vocational institutes, they don't seem to be even really operating anymore. Like that's what Western reporting is saying. And given that, we still have to pretend that there's merit to an idea that not only is there this re-education process going on, this forced re-education, or whatever you want to call it, not only is that going on, but an actual genocide. And we're still like, I don't understand what the fucking disconnect is. Without, like, we can compare what's going on in the West Bank right now to Xinjiang. Where are the fucking people being killed and shot in the street and bombed every day by the Chinese government? Where is this going on? These populations that are supposed to be getting genocide are all increasing. I'm not saying that it's great or perfect, that no one's human rights get violated. I don't think I would suggest that. But like, where's this genocide that's going on? Where's the migrations, the population migrations in response to this? We're just not seeing this. You know? I mean, I don't want to sound insensitive. I know that, like, if there was people that were caught up in this de-radicalization measure, or like this forced to go into these vocational schools who against their wills, you know, I'm not saying that that's a wonderful thing, but like, we're still calling that a genocide though. Israel makes the same argument about Palestinian populations. I believe that's right, Mouse Owlets, but I guess the difference is, like, we're seeing the footage of like Israel bombing the West Bank though, and like they're it's under this intense military occupation, and we know the way that it's set up as this apartheid situation. So you can split hairs about whether you call that genocidal or not. But there's still no comparison to what's going on, you know? And I don't doubt that there's been heavy police presence, and there's been like that kind of, those kinds of trends happening in Xinjiang. But like the idea that it's comparable or measurable. It's cultural genocide for China to reduce hours of Uyghur language instruction in schools, and that's why we should ban Chinese diaspora kids from getting any Chinese language education in the West. And again, like, but even like in these vocational schools, like there was Uyghur language instruction. There's like Uyghur language TV stations and like popular celebrities. And like in China, like, can we say the same thing in Canada about our indigenous population? Do we have like indigenous language, like cultural institutions and radio programs and TV programs and film stars and things like that? Of course not. Have we talked about the self-proclaimed communists that have never heard of Stalin? There's been a lot of bad Stalin discourse. I saw recently from people that host podcasts about socialist theory. You got very close this time, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you, Lodian. I was actually started to say the word, and I pictured you going, and it kind of like freaked me out when I was trying to say it. Yeah, like the meme of the picture claiming that Tibetan kids are having their language taken away from them when there's Tibetan written on the board. Yeah, it's like literally the language is right there. It's a weird discussion because, like, I never want to pretend that everything's perfect, you know, and I wouldn't suggest that. I don't think anyone in this community would suggest that. I'm sure no one in the China or in Xinjiang would suggest that everything's fucking great and wonderful and perfect, but we're still saying that there's a genocide happening though, while our own close allies are engaging in significantly worse behavior. You know? It's fucking strange to me. And this guy's acting like it's this big brave thing to say that like there's a genocide going on. It's bizarre to me.
Follow our sort of legal mechanisms with the United States or work out sort of a prisoner swap. Everyone, you know, had an opinion on that, but at the end of the day, people in Ottawa had the real say. So it is all aimed at those big, high-level issues that not every Canadian would think about every day, but will matter both.
Sounds like they had a policy for combating religious extremism that was exported to the region by the U.S. and our allies. I mean, and like our country, it opens up that other argument or a conversation about how our country's allowed to like deal with what they view as religious extremism. It's undeniable that there was extremism and separatism that was affecting that region and leading to people being killed and murdered and leading to terrorist attacks. Are they just not allowed to respond to that? Or can they only respond to that with bombing and invading and murdering people in the street? But when they try to do it through this process of this de-radicalization system, then we get at our Western-style finger-wagging lectures at them while we're like kidnapping people and bringing them to black site torture prisons and fucking blowing up hospitals and funerals like I was mentioning before. invading countries. Like, we're really going to lecture other countries that tried to deal with this issue of religious extremism in a different way than what we did. Yeah, only Ukraine can react to separatists. We're not really interested in hearing from separatists in eastern Ukraine, certainly. We've been funding Nazis for the last decade trying to fight these separatists in eastern Ukraine and funding and training actual Nazis in the process. Not only is the language still there, just look at any road sign. Native language is always at the top, and then Mandarin characters under that. Yeah, imagine in the US if they put Spanish first, or Navajo, or etc., or here in Algonquin, or any other indigenous dialect. Like, Canada continues to try and rat fuck Algonquin people out of the rights to their land, and with the Wet'suwet'en as well. Mounties are still doing starlight tours. Indigenous women still going missing and being murdered. Yeah. We did Gladio B. Now they're mad they didn't fall into the trap. It's the same thing with Hong Kong, and it's the same thing with Taiwan, right? We just keep trying to get them to fall into that trap. And then when they don't do it, we get even more angry at them and even more belligerent. Like, that's what it is. Let's call this what it is. Let's try and finish this goddamn thing.
In very concrete ways, in how Canada relates in trade with China and how we fit into our agreements with our longstanding allies. All of it matters, and Beijing wants to have a say in everything that's going on politically in Canada.
Sam, some people, I'm sure, are going to say, and probably you'll let me know, have said that this is a paranoid fantasy and this is Red Scare stuff. Your book, I noted, begins with an introduction by a human rights scholar, Teng Biao, titled "Holding Governments to Account Should Not Be Conflated with Racism."
Fortunately, he prefaced his book with a fucking reactionary Chinese expatriate talking about how human rights are important, a human rights expert, part of the human rights establishment. So don't worry about that. It's not racist Red Scare bullshit. This anti-CPC Chinese person said it was all right to do, so no problem. This human rights scholar.
As a white reporter covering this stuff, I wonder if that's also something that is at play, that people say this is a racist narrative here that is in a time when anti-Asian sentiment and
thank you, Jesse,
racism and violence
for waiting
has gone
35
up,
minutes
is
to bring
dangerous
this up.
And is
this is question 1.
Wrong and wrong-headed. Have you faced those kinds of accusations, and has that been a factor that you feel has inhibited Canada from taking a closer look at this stuff?
I mean, to handle the last question first, it has inhibited Canada. Why can I say that? I mean, I'm hearing that from people inside government that it does inhibit Canada. Let's take the Xinjiang example again. We had noted senators, I think, stand up in debates and say we should not label or say China's guilty of what the UN says they are, because that will inflame anti-Asian racism. So there's a very concrete example where some powerful politicians would have inhibited Canada's standing with the UN on that resolution for that specific issue. And I want to say that there is good reason anti-Asian racism does happen. So the reporting needs to be very sensitive and careful.
You
and
just
so
carefully write down what the U.S. State Department tells you.
Impacts. And yet on the other side,
you got to be very careful in this climate. Just very carefully write down what the intelligence community and the U.S. State Department says and put it in your fucking newspaper. That's responsible journalism.
I can tell you, Jesse, the United Front Work Department uses, racial divisions. It uses the allegation of anti-Asian racism as a cover for the Chinese Communist Party's very, ironically racist attitude that it should be the arbiter of the broad opinions of the Asian community in Canada, which I'm not just speculating or theorizing. There are elements of Chinese intelligence operations that push forward those narratives, that reporting on whether Canada needs a foreign agent registry is somehow racist. The very specific example that Hong Kong-born Canadian former MP Kenny Chiu out in Richmond, BC, put forward a bill for a foreign agent registry, and Kenny Chiu was very clearly attacked. Many open source researchers have said he was attacked by sort of Beijing adjacent media networks as being a racist for suggesting that bill. Overall, yes, the reporting can be
Hong Kong
attacked
expat.
or counterattacked by people with very, very dark and nefarious motives. And at the same time, it's also true that the reporting needs to be balanced and careful, and we need to understand that this is about the Chinese Communist Party's efforts to subvert Canada's democracy. It's not about race. It's about a political warfare tool that I've talked about, the United Front.
This is pathetic.
Sam,
yeah, it is about race.
The Prime Minister wanted to turn the dial down on this once the finger was pointed at him. But
yes, TRRS
in other
is Beijing
messaging,
adjacent.
he is confirming what you're saying. The Prime Minister has said that foreign actors are playing aggressive games with Canadian democracy. And we saw a more combative stance. Trudeau, I think, in more of a passive-aggressive way, put out a kind of a tough talk message about what happened during his meeting with Xi Jinping. And then Xi kind of like buttonholed him and accosted him in view of a camera. And so that's not how I remember that meeting, essentially, was the message I took from that. But it does seem like the gloves are off, or the need to put up a front that everything is okay between these two nations seems to be dissolving. And we seem to be more overtly at odds. Does that create a scenario where getting some clarity on just how bad the situation has gotten and figuring out exactly where Canada has been compromised can occur? Are we going to get to clarity on this?
Well, I mean, it can get very complicated or it can get very simple. So what we've seen in the timeline since my November 7th report is that the government came out and said, we are going to consult the public about a foreign agent registry, which was one of the big sort of gaps that November 7th story identified.
Is that like a comedy? Like, is that like a hilariously Canadian response to say, we've just learned that we may be compromised from the smallest to the grandest level by a foreign government that dwarfs us in every conceivable way. We're going to take drastic measures and ask spies.
It's about saying people of a particular race who disagree with them politically are illegitimate actors. That's right. Not enjoying seeing the thin edge of the "we have to have a war with China now" wedge coming already into view. I mean, if it wasn't into view before, you can certainly see it now.
Is to sign a registry? Like that's what we're going to do?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that seeing any, minute progress is not a good thing, but I do see the comedy in the aspect that this is not a big ask, Jesse. Again, this bipartisan panel with access to very sensitive intelligence reports that aren't disseminated Canadians,
intelligence
but
reports,
we can probably,
folks, they've seen them.
Assume these
They've
are
seen
smart
the raw
people,
intelligence.
have recommended since 2019, Canada needs a Foreign Agent Registry Act as a first step, right?
Yeah. And as I take your point, it's not that we expect every
They've not mentioned
foreign
Israel
actor
once,
to
by the way,
line up to sign it, but it does give authorities a very clear recourse. What do we do if we think that we have evidence to prove that somebody is a foreign actor? Well, they haven't signed this registry, so they've done something wrong, so we can actually do something about it.
Well, you're right. We're not even there where we can charge people because they would have to amend the criminal code and have actual foreign interference laws.
Like, it might not even be against the law to be a foreign actor infiltrating our democracy. That might be okay.
Yes. There are people that say it's pretty much okay in Canada right now.
Is there
So
going to be
a
any
very
Ukrainians
first minimal
or
step
Americans or Saudis
Canada,
or Israelis on that list?
The noted sort of anti-Russian kleptocracy expert, Bill Browder, told me Canada is irresponsible for not having this registry. And you're right, it's not like that would lead to criminal charges. That's just the first step in being able to take the next step, which is now that you have,
took a free
it's
trip to
compelling
Israel.
people, hey, you'd better tell us the truth if you're spying or working for for Russia, right? Once we've said, okay, people, now you have to tell the truth, then you need to take the step and amend the criminal code that if they don't declare that they're working for Russia, we can charge them, right? And that's what they've done in the UK in the past year, let me add, after the MI5 essentially leaked a very public warning that the United Front Work Department had infiltrated UK's parliament. Then we saw a couple of big legal changes in the UK. And so Canada is comically lagging the pack on this file, yes.
Sam, this is fascinating. Thank you.
No, it was not.
Thanks, Jesse. I feel we could go another 10 rounds and dig deeper, so maybe you'll have me back.
No, it was not. Maybe you'll have me back. He's already angling to come back. Here's what I think about you guys.
We're through the looking glass here, people. We're through the looking glass here, people.
That's what I think about you, Jesse, and whatever the other guy's name was. Sam Cooper. This is the guy. That's what I think about you. Yes, Jesse. Yes, it was racist Red Scare bullshit. Yes, it absolutely was. Jesse, you should be ashamed for promoting this. This is just, I've got secondhand embarrassment from listening to this. Absolutely embarrassing shit. And it's making me extremely even more despondent about the absolutely pathetic state of whatever passes for an independent media in this country. I feel dumber for having listened to it. This was so fucking bad. So the whole time they were talking about people doing legal activity to promote their real political views. That's right. Yeah. They're very upset about the idea of countries like having foreign agents promoting their interests in other nations. Which, as I pointed out repeatedly, you can find multiple concrete examples of foreign countries engaging in this exact behavior in Canada to tremendous benefit. Whereas you can look around at Canadian academia, media, and politics, and the rampant anti-China rhetoric that's pervasive in all these institutions. So clearly whatever devious foreign influence up they're engaged in here is not really working all that well. And they're still spending time complaining about this rather than talking about the various other nations where we can point out specific concrete examples of how they interfere in our precious little Western liberal democracy here. And engage in all the same behavior, but even significantly more sinister and devious from what these people are fucking talking about. No, I did not see that, James. I missed that. I actually have to go, folks. I gotta go. Listen, I'll say one more time. If you enjoy this program, if you're annoyed by listening to Canada Land, if you're annoyed by the state of the media and independent media in Canada, please support this stream. I gotta go soon. I can't crack the whip too much on this. But please support this stream by subscribing for $5 per month.
You can count on me.
Or
You're gonna have
gifting
good old
subs
Rob to talk you through all this.
Move up and down the friendship triangle system. That's Twitch's only triangle-shaped, two-dimensional friendship access and trickle-down cloud tiered reward system. By gifting subscriptions, that's what keeps this content on the air. That's what allows me to keep doing this kind of commentary, and which is carving out a tiny little niche for myself of people in this country that have fucking sane views about geopolitics and foreign policy. Thank you, James, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. Thank you. The best was when Nora Loretto was shitting on Jesse when she was on a couple months ago. I wonder if it would be a good idea for me to try and reach out to see if I could get on there. I might send Jesse this segment from today and see what he has to say. They're closing down Confucius Institute education facilities in the UK. We're missing out on so many great people and great important collaborators. I mean, it's not like it's a good idea in this coming century, which anyone can agree is going to be dominated by China. Probably not a good idea to have, language institutes in our culture teaching people how to speak Mandarin. You know, why would we ever do that? Yeah, Jesse's going to put us all on the list. God, that was so bad. That was so bad. Significantly worse than what I was imagining. We'll continue this conversation. Sorry for the echo. Sorry about that. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow, folks. Yeah, or just learn about China and its culture. Not needed at all based on this discourse. That's right. We should instead just frame this nation of 1.4 billion people as being our dangerous enemies that are constantly trying to subvert our precious democracy and gaining handholds in all our institutions. We should generally, that should be our stance when it comes to understanding China, rather than actually taking any effort to learn anything about their language or culture or history or, you know, economic or material conditions. This is really not leading us anywhere good. It's not leading us anywhere good at all. NGO stooge and NDP leader turned conservative MLA Dominic Carty recently booted the Confucius Institute out of New Brunswick. There we go. Good. But you see, they're only against the Chinese people, not against the Chinese people, only the Communist Party, of course. Of course. Don't worry, this is not racist Red Scare shit. Yeah, some NGO ghoulish human rights expert wrote the foreword to my book. And he'll tell you that all these things that I'm doing are very important. Last chance to subscribe, folks. Let it go. I like VJ's point. I've just started immediately inquiring.
Count on me. You're gonna have
how much do you actually know
about
about how Chinese government operates and Chinese people? Yeah, and the thing is, people know, right? They know, Dr. Maggot. They know that no one has any democratic input, no one has any democratic participation, and Xi Jinping just utters decrees and forces everyone in the 1.4 billion people in China to immediately follow what he says, right? People just know that. They don't need to learn about it. They know that already. Of course. Thank you, Comrade Social Distancing. Thank you. I really appreciate all your support, Comrade Social Distancing. Thank you, Rob, even though this has made me crazy. Well, it's really important, I think, that we understand like this, where this discourse is going. This has been the main thread of the last 2+ years that I've been doing this program. Is following where this trend is going. And if anyone thought I was being alarmist about it before, hopefully people are figuring out kind of where we're going with this. They throw out Hu Jintao, no! People can... Oh, fuck. Let's do that. People pretending to be upset about Hu Jintao are the funniest people. You're so concerned about Hu Jintao. Name 3 of his albums. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I support further cooperation with the CPC. I'm against this endless saber rattling and Red Scare McCarthyist fear-mongering and racist fear-mongering about China. I take the extremist view that we should be forming partnerships with this country and figuring out ways that we can work together for mutual prosperity into the next century. That's my crazy extremist radical position. And no, I'm not being financed by the CPC or any part of the Chinese threat network. Although if that was an option, if that was being offered to me, I would certainly be interested in hearing the offer. Let's just say that. Okay, I'm not on the take. I'm not on the take from the CPC or anyone else.
Seriously,
oh
wow.
Oh my goodness. Dakadoon, thank you so much. Dakadoon, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Thank you to Dakadoon. The alert is just so good. That's right. I don't have any sources in the CPC funding this program. I've got Dakadoon and Comrade Social Distancing and Don Dark Zoni and all the other elite level members of this community that support the show. Thank you, folks. We'll continue the conversation tomorrow. Goodbye.